Hello, everyone. Thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney from London as we discuss the next steps of personal computing. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets today with last generation Meta avatars. We're using hand tracking with built-in microphones. We've got tablets in front of us that show us notes and comments so we can interact with our audience when we're live. And my thanks to our patrons for supporting the work we do over on UploadVR.com. That's XR Developer News, Podum, the developer Smash Drums, Holonet, Mike Manzano, Richard Mella, Parmesan, and Qubits. We have one of the hardest working teams in journalism and easily the hardest working teams dedicated to covering the impact of virtual reality technology. And I thank you, patrons, for helping us do this work. Before I hand it over to David, I wanted to read a quick paragraph that I wrote my team here over the last 24 hours, as well as a second one I wrote just for this audience. We have legitimate reports in front of us of prisoners being put into headsets, of lawyers introducing VR as evidence at trial, of children attending public school in the privacy of their bedrooms, and of people 3D printing guns at the same time they are training to handle them in headsets. And of course, we're also aware of many people using VR to find real companionship. We've already covered some of these things, but to evaluate them at the depth that this level of change deserves is extraordinarily time-consuming. I wanted to add that research suggests that VR, when used carefully, can be the best training, learning, and teaching platform the world has ever known. So just wanted to make that statement, get that out there, and think about what that means over the next 3 to 5 years. David, what do we have today?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot more than just the consumer use cases that we typically focus on. And that's something we'll be talking about later in the show, actually, in some senses. So first, I want to say that the idea that Meta drops news just before we go live, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory anymore. I believe it. I fully believe it cannot be a coincidence that they announce that Horizon OS UI overhaul just as we would have gone live. That's not a coincidence anymore.
There were some typos there were typos in their press notes or in their release notes. It said the date in brackets of the release date for this. So like they clearly pushed that out fast.
Oh yeah, there are, as you say, literal like placeholders there where it has, open square brackets, insert date here. I think a lot of it was related to the fact that it kind of leaked out. We'll talk about that when we get into it. But, for background, earlier today, I was in the middle of, in fact, almost finished writing an article about how the tutorial for the overhaul had actually leaked. It was available in the Quest firmware. There were people trying it. I had spoken to people who were trying it. We had footage of them trying it in an article, almost ready to go. And then pretty much as I would have been, going into the editing process of getting that article out, Meta just announced the damn thing. So I do wonder if some of those leaks are related to them just kind of announcing this very, very quickly. But we'll get into that because today we have quite neat sections in the show. A lot of topics, but they do kind of fall into 4 sections with one exception. So the first will be the Meta section. We're going to start with Meta this time and get it over and done with in a sense. We'll talk about Andrew Bosworth, the CTO of Meta, responding to the Quest performance regression and battery saver issues that we discussed last week. He's given a response there to developers. We'll then discuss briefly the fact that Ray-Ban Meta glasses are now available in India and Mexico. And by sheer population, that is by far Meta's largest hardware expansion to date. And then we will finish our Meta section by discussing the Horizon OS v77, which is rolling out and testing for some people on the PTC, as we will detail, a complete system interface overhaul. And we're not just talking about changing some colors and rounding the buttons differently. This is a completely new overhaul, the biggest UI overhaul of Meta's entire time in mobile and standalone VR. There's been nothing like it so far, and we'll get into it. They're also, in that update, testing turning Instagram photos into 3D in the same way that you can do on visionOS for your local photos, your Apple photos on Instagram. So that's some interesting changes coming to V77, or should I say being tested in V77. We'll explain what I mean by that soon. We'll then have a Apple section. Firstly, a quote from Bono. You may wonder why we're quoting Bono. The answer is that he has the first feature-length Apple immersive video coming out later this month, May 30th, and he says that Apple is dying to make Vision Pro more affordable, but not put off by how long it's going to take. And, Bono was obviously in talks with Apple executives during the making of this, so it sounds like he has the pulse here of Apple's feelings towards this, which are vastly different than what you're going to hear from mainstream technology media and mainstream media in general. The next Apple section topic we'll talk about is Godot, the open source game engine that we've talked about many times in this show, now has rudimentary support for Apple Vision Pro's visionOS. So that was actually contributed by Apple engineers. There was a little bit of drama that went on GitHub about how that would happen. We'll get into that and what I mean by rudimentary so far. Then we will have a kind of PC VR section where we discuss Flight Simulator 2024 getting foveated rendering. Previously on this show, last month I think it was, we talked about the beta adding support for fixed foveated rendering. Well, now the actual release, Sim Update 2, has shipped with fixed and eye-tracked foveated rendering. So if you have an eye-tracked VR headset on PC, you should be able to set up eye-tracked foveated rendering in Flight Simulator 2024. We will also discuss Varjo's documentary. I saw someone in the comments bring this up and say that they enjoyed it. I did too, and I recommend you go and watch it. Varjo has made a documentary highlighting some interesting non-consumer uses of VR and mixed reality. It's a 30-minute video on YouTube. It's interesting. Obviously, as you might expect, all 8 are using Varjo headsets. Surprise, surprise. But regardless, it's still interesting to see some of these use cases going on. And like I said, I recommend you watch it. We'll finish our PC VR section by talking about the quote from the founder of Lynx, the French standalone headset, who has said that the design of Valve's next headset, codenamed Deckard, is quite amazing. So Stan is claiming, that Lynx shares some components. That's suggesting to me that this comes from the supply chain. And it seems like, based on Stan's comments, he may have seen the industrial design of Valve's next headset, and he seems impressed. We'll talk about that. Then I guess we will have one topic that doesn't really neatly fit into anything else, but it does bring us nicely into our final section. So we'll discuss the Xreal 1 glasses. Becoming 6'd off with the Xreal Eye add-on. You pop in a little camera between the lenses for $100, and they go from 3'd off to 6'd off. That is pretty crazy. We will be very curious to see what is the tracking quality of that monocular slam. That's an interesting product for sure. And don't think anyone's officially done that before. Obviously, there've been lots of DIY projects to do things like this. I don't think any product has let you just snap in one camera to turn 6'd off. So that'll be interesting. Finally, our final section of the show, we will be discussing Google I/O, Android XR, everything Google related to XR, smart glasses, etc. We'll talk about that demo they showed on stage of sleek smart glasses with a HUD again, because they showed almost the exact same demo at TED as we covered before. But we'll cover what's arguably much more important than another demo of a prototype is the announcement of actual products. Google now has a go-to-market strategy for how they intend to compete with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. They're partnering with, surprise, surprise, EssilorLuxottica's rising competitors, Gentle Monster and Warby Parker on Gemini smart glasses. Additionally, we now know what the second Android XR headset will be, and it is Xreal's Project Aura. I'm also going to discuss at the end an editorial that I plan to have up tomorrow-ish about some confusion around what Android XR means. Because if you were to listen to Google's communication, you might imagine that this is one operating system that runs seamlessly between glasses and headsets. But in reality, it's 2 operating systems. It's, what you're running on these Gemini glasses is not the kind of Meta Horizon OS type OS that you're running on the Samsung headset. These are actually completely different things. And in classic style in this industry, I don't know why companies love to do this so much. It's misleading marketing. We call out Meta for it. We've called out Apple for it. We've called out pretty much everyone for misleading marketing at this point. I think besides Valve, I can't recall Valve marketing an existing feature in a misleading way. But we did call them out for announcing 3 games that they only shipped 1 of. So we're not afraid to call anyone out for misleading marketing, and we'll try to bring you the reality of these things, not the press releases, the detail behind the press releases and the impressions. So big show today. Let's get into it, Ian, if you are ready.
Yep. Yep, let's get through it. I just wanted to mention everyone in the comics. John, Biggs, we've got James out there, Daniel, Onakazi, Clay, Psycho Bueller saying they're watching it in their Oculus Go. Good luck to you out there in your Oculus Go. And yeah, let's just move through this as quickly as we can. There's a couple conversations we'll probably have on specific subjects here. A lot of things to get through.
Sure. I just want to reply to one comment here. James O'Loughlin saying, what did Apple do? So the one thing Apple did in terms of misleading marketing so far in XR was for spatial videos, right? Before Vision Pro was released, they were showing these marketing shots of a panning third-person view of someone in a Vision Pro viewing a spatial video. And it showed the kind of parallax that you could not get from simple stereoscopic video. It showed the kind of parallax that you could only get from volumetric video. And this was before Apple had actually explicitly said what spatial video precisely was. So you could easily have been misled by that to think that this was going to be some sort of sixed off volumetric video. But of course, Vision Pro came out. They were clear what it is. It was pretty clear quickly. It's not the end of the world. Let's get into this first topic. Unless you.
Let me just ask P-Wizard a question. If you're watching in visionOS, are you working right now, or are you like doing other things? I'm curious what other windows you have up in addition to us if you're watching us in visionOS. All right, David, go ahead.
LL asks, in regards to the misleading marketing, what did Pimax do? We're not going to get into that one.
Oh God, we don't have an hour for that one. Sorry.
Yeah. So last week we discussed how developers had told us, some of the top store developers on Quest with some of the most popular apps had told us how they were seeing performance regression over the past kind of half a year since the V70 update, roughly. With each version, their average frame rate in their app would be decreasing. And this isn't just for them, this is for their users. This is their analytics proving it. And they had brought this to Meta on an internal forum, and they hadn't seen any response. Simultaneously, we discussed how Meta had made this really weird change to battery saver without telling consumers, you or developers, where it would cap the frame rate to 45 FPS. So developers were suddenly getting a bunch of complaints from people with battery saver on of, why is this so laggy? What's going on? Why is there so double imaging? Why is using my app that I've been using for, dozens of hours a week? Why is it now making me sick? Like, this was real complaints that these developers were getting. And then we also touched on how there were just like a bunch of bugs in the Quest developer experience on the back end, the store back end, and in Link. It's been a mess by Meta's own admission. And now Meta CTO has kind of come out and responded to this in an Instagram Ask Me Anything session. And, in fairness to Bosworth, this was not a kind of deflection. This was not a, what you might have imagined perhaps from an executive of this kind, maybe, of where they go, our data shows that this is only happening to, 0.2% or whatever. This was he owned it, to be fair to him. He said that this was great feedback from developers that Meta is taking seriously and spending time on. And he confirmed that Meta is rolling out a fix for the battery saver issue. He said, it's our responsibility. These are our mistakes, and we're going to fix them. So he kind of has owned up to this, and, maybe it's just what we all want to hear, but that is what it is. He did push back on the suggestion that the root cause of these problems were the pace of updates, saying that in his opinion, Meta just needs to have a stronger set of processes in place for quality control before things get out the door. He also said, and we understand that this is not casual. This is people's livelihoods, time spent on the line. It matters a ton. It's the experience that consumers have. We're taking it seriously. We're doing the work. So it sounds like he's not deflecting this. And it doesn't surprise me because, again, this was some of the top developers on the store saying, Meta, this is not good enough.
Well, context there is, of course, Meta at the last Connect event with the executive who is no longer employed at Meta saying this is our stable era. And what me as a viewer of this market for a really long time, when I hear an executive at Meta say that, what I hear them say is that we intend for this to be our stable era, and we intend for this to be good. But I mean, all indications are that Meta changes its strategy every couple months. And so, I wonder how much he believed what he was saying when he said that, and then how much didn't that turn out to be true, given these kinds of regressions just a few months later. Want to say I want to comment on Big Bomb's comment out there. There's a bit of a contradiction between VR as noise cancellation for the eye, and I can have infinite windows open in VR. I love that sentiment. It's really interesting to think about. If you hate your job, then it's a bit of torture to put on your VR headset. If you love your job, then you put on the VR headset and you get a focus mode anytime you put it on that blocks out all distractions that you have from every other system. And I don't know if that speaks to what you're saying out there, but I wanted to comment on it. David, what more on this do we have to go over?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is a pretty wide issue with all of Meta's efforts in VR MR so far. Is just software quality across the consumer side, across the developer side. And, Bosworth insists that this isn't about the pace of updates. I also saw Amanda Watson, who was formerly at Oculus and worked at Airlink, saying that she doesn't think it's the pace of updates. But, I'm not inside Meta. I'm not seeing their software processes, but it just seems a remarkable coincidence that of all the devices in my life, it's the one that gets the constant monthly feature updates that has the worst software quality. That seems like a weird coincidence to me. Like if you're using your Nintendo Switch, your PlayStation, the amount of times that you encounter a bug, a glitch, a horribly unpolished thing, it's pretty rare, right? Like, I don't know, maybe your experience differs. Let us know in the comments. But all of the devices around my home, the one that is pretty much definitely the buggiest is my Quest headset, right? And again, maybe it's a coincidence that just happens to be the device that's also getting the most feature updates. But I think maybe there is an argument for look at the fact that Apple and Google release one big update a year with a bunch of updates. And that's changed a little in recent years, right? Sometimes they do a few minor monthly updates, but it's a very different strategy from Meta of every month you're getting a new feature. Again, I don't know the software processes inside Meta. Maybe it genuinely is just a coincidence, and there is a way to do both, to deliver constant monthly feature updates without the bugs. As some developers have pointed out, a huge issue is that oftentimes Meta is aware of the bug in the public test channel, but it rolls it out anyway to stable. And that's obviously an easy fix there, right? Don't push operating system versions that you know to have critical flaws to stable until you fix them. That's a possible fix there. But I just wonder how much of this is wider about how Meta builds software in general.
Yeah, the PTC channel, the public test channel, for those who might not know what that term means. Public test channel is a pretty popular thing out there for a large number of people. I've always wondered, what if they attached that sort of public test channel to the Quest Plus subscription program? So you could get to PTC if you're a paid subscription subscriber. And as they switch over to Horizon OS, wouldn't that be a fantastic way to have a beta program basically across all headsets?
Yeah, I guess that is one important thing to point out. If you are experiencing a bunch of bugs and you're on the public test channel, switch to stable, right? I have a lot less, what's the word? Look, if you're on a beta version of an operating system and you're experiencing bugs, kind of, that's pretty obvious, right? You're on a beta version. The issue is that it's still bad on the stable. I have one of my active headsets on PTC and one on stable. And remarkably, I actually don't see that much of a stability difference. But oftentimes, PTC does have the bugs that stable doesn't. So number one thing to do is opt out of the PTC. By definition, whether it be Windows, iOS, Mac, whatever, if you're opting into a beta version of an operating system, you're trading off stability for newness, for novelty, for new features. So don't do that if you care about stability, but make sure that that's not the issue. There's a few comments here I want to address. Wabo saying Microsoft updates Windows more than once a month. I'm not sure about the correlation. Those updates are not feature updates. They are, security patches, minor bug fixes. Windows releases its actual feature updates like once a year, right? The last one was the one we talked about killing Windows MR headsets. It's called like the Windows 11 H2 24 update or whatever. So I think I'm not saying don't release updates. I'm saying feature updates that are fundamentally changing everything, which is what we're going to talk about really soon. James O'Loughlin speculating maybe AI is causing tech debt and rot. Maybe this is the use of large language models for coding. It's an interesting theory, but the problem is that this was happening on Quest headsets long before LLMs were being used for coding at Meta. So, that's not the issue here, I don't think.
I think it was Carmack that said the switch to Horizon OS would inevitably slow down development? It's hard not to remember that comment as I'm reading through Afro Badger and other people commenting out here, sort of echoing some of these things, the stability. I want to talk about Baroque's comment on, then there's the A/B testing even within the same versions. And I wonder if there's anyone out there at Meta, like who's left Meta or still been at Meta, like what does it feel like to only be able to move forward your argument within this organization after running an A/B test that proves your point? Like, how often is that just the only way to get something done inside Meta is a really good question I have.
Yeah, it's a great question. And A/B testing also means, like, how do you do QA when user A might have, feature 1, 2, 7, and 11, and user B has 2, 3, 6, and 5? I feel like we'll talk about this soon when we talk about Horizon OS v77, but this is an OS where it's not like iOS, right? When you update your iPhone, you have the same features as everyone else in your country. It's not like Apple, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't do like massive A/B tests for the core functionality of iOS. You get what you get, and it rolls out, and you download the update, you read the changelog, and everything in the changelog you get on your phone. As we'll talk about soon with Horizon OS, everything in the changelog is something that with the new version may or may not be on your headset today and may roll out randomly 3 weeks later. So there is this kind of lack of cohesion. And maybe they have the software architected intelligently enough that these subsystems don't affect others, but color me slightly skeptical that that is the case and that there aren't, crazy interactions between A/B tests involved in a lot of the stability issues here.
Yep. Let's move on to the Ray-Ban Meta glasses now being available in India and Mexico. Yeah. Is there anything else to add here on this one? Because this is a slow global rollout for Meta, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, just what I noted at the start, which is that this is by far the biggest in terms of population expansion of Meta Reality Labs so far. India is an enormous country population-wise. Mexico is a decently large country. It's also available in the United Arab Emirates. So there's 3 new countries. Still fewer countries than they sell Quest headsets in. But yeah, on India, right, this is a large population, but the GDP per capita is 33 times less than the United States. So it actually will not be an enormous increase in the real market here. I looked into the figures here of what are these things priced at, and it's actually pretty much slap bang on the Indian average monthly salary. So a pair of smart glasses, you're at your monthly salary. So for the average Indian, this is not something that we expect them to be purchasing, but India obviously does have a growing middle class, a growing upper class, and that's the kind of market that Meta and EssilorLuxottica will be hoping to target here.
I like the comment out there. What was it? Move fast and break something for a random group of people. I can't remember the comment exact. I'm not quoting it directly, but it was pretty close to that. It was pretty funny. I always think of the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street when it comes to those kinds of A/B tests where you're just randomly testing out something on a group of people out there. Old Twilight Zone episode. I'm ready to talk about the next one. Are we ready to move on yet?
Yeah, I mean, one thing on that A/B testing thing is I saw from the current case with Meta in the US government about the Instagram and WhatsApp mergers that they revealed in court that there was a small percentage of users for which they A/B tested never showing ads. So that's a really interesting A/B test. Imagine being used.
What did that meeting look like? Right? You want to know? You and I both want to know how that meeting went, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, I want to know. Did these people just think Instagram doesn't have ads? Like, did they go and talk to their friends, and their friends said, I like this, but I hate those ads, and they went, ads? What do you mean ads? Instagram doesn't have ads. It would be a funny conversation.
God. Was it? There was some movie I want to say. I want to say Netflix just removed Bandersnatch, or they were going to move Bandersnatch. They're like sort of choose your own adventure Netflix style story, but I want to say there was some movie that released somewhere back in the day with one scene different between the 2 cuts of the movie. And so you would have friends doing that conversation afterwards. Like, you remember that scene from the movie? And you're like, no, that scene wasn't there in my Clue. Was it Clue? I think it was. There was some story about Clue having a different ending for different people in the theater, or maybe they wanted to do that and they didn't do it or something like that.
Yeah, no, I know what you're referring to in terms of Netflix. I don't want to spoil this for anyone, but there is an episode of a certain Netflix sci-fi show where they do intentionally show some people one thing and some another thing. And given the context, again, I really don't want to spoil this, so I have to be super vague, but given the context, it's incredibly funny that they've done this.
Yeah,
And I'm
the
sure this is
Mandela
going to
effect.
genuinely break some people's minds.
Yeah, the Mandela effect as a feature, right? That's where we're moving into with our future. All right, I've broken my brain sufficiently for today. What do we got next, David?
Yeah, so let's talk about that big news that obviously delayed our show today. Horizon OS V77 tests the total UI overhaul, as well as turning Instagram photos 3D. So, if you may remember at Meta Connect 2024, back in September, Meta announced a total UI overhaul for Horizon OS. Horizon OS being, in case you're unfamiliar in our audience, the operating system that runs on Quest headsets and that Meta hopes will also run on third-party headsets from companies like Asus and Lenovo, the two companies who have signed on so far. They revealed at Connect that it's called Navigator, but they didn't really say much else about it. And now it is rolling out to a very small number of people on the public test channel. And they say that over time, they want to make it available to everyone in the coming months. So this is going to be a really slow rollout, it sounds, and gradual. If you're on the public test channel on V77, one day it'll pop up. And then if you're not on the public test channel, one day it'll pop up for you, right? This is classic Meta rollout strategy. There is no way to force it that we're aware of. I think you can force the tutorial. And as I mentioned at the start of the show, some people have already been doing that, launching the tutorial with ADB commands. But after that tutorial, they're still back to the good old-fashioned Quest interface. So what exactly is different here other than what you can clearly see on screen? The biggest difference between Navigator and the traditional Quest UI that has existed pretty much not dramatically changed since the Gear VR and Oculus Go days, when the kind of operating system here originated, is that the system interface is now an overlay rather than just being an app. So today on Quest, if you open up the settings, if you open up the quick settings or the app launcher, these things are all apps. It sounds weird almost in a sense, but imagine if when you clicked on the start button in Windows on your PC, instead of opening an overlay that pops up over your windows, a new window opened and that window was the start menu. That's kind of how Quest works today. And it's clunky for a reason that became really obvious when they started to do the multitasking updates last year, where you can bring up multiple windows and position them. In that, if you already have a window in front of you, right, you've got your Netflix and your YouTube and your Slack or whatever, and then you want to just open something else or change the brightness, you open settings. Well, first you open quick settings and it replaces one of your windows and pushes one of your real windows away. Then you open settings from quick settings and quick settings moves here and settings moves here. It's a nightmare. Anyone who uses Quest today knows that it just doesn't work. And this is the solution. So Navigator is a kind of full screen overlay. It dims out your pass through or their surrounding while you're using it. You can actually pin the apps that you want in the app launcher here. The settings are also like a separate thing. And these are independent from the 2D apps, the windows that you are able to position in the world. So it reduces a lot of the jank of that, a lot of the clutter. And Meta actually says you can pin up to 10 items. So this is becoming more like a customizable start menu or home screen on a phone or PC, rather than the kind of app library they had before where you could pin one app, but everything else was just either, sort A to Z or by recent. So this is... from the looks of it, we haven't tried this yet, but from the looks of it and from one person I've spoken to who has tried it, it does seem to be a big improvement. I'm not sure how much I like the fact that it dims your pass-through or background compared to how it used to work, which is just bringing up a menu bar. But the general kind of direction here does seem to be an improvement. Meta says it designed Navigator based on everything it's learned over the past 10 years of spatial software, and that it's the beginning of a broader evolution of Horizon OS. So this, from what I'm aware of, this has been in development for a long time, and now it's starting to arrive. You're muted, Ian.
Sort of breaking my brain here, looking at this. My history in reporting about I don't know, personal computers goes back to being an intern at the Dallas Morning News in what was it, 2009, 2008 or something. When, or I guess it would have been 2008 when the App Store launched for the iPhone. And I went and downloaded every app I possibly could from the App Store on the very first day of availability, and spent a stupid amount of money on all those apps to have them. And I don't know if it was Super Monkey Ball, that you had like a gyroscope powered Super Monkey Ball, and it was cool to have this whole new paradigm of apps. But I went and worked for a company that wrote about just apps for a little while there, and I went and contacted the developer. Joe Hewitt was his name, of the Facebook app. And what he had done is he had built an interface for the original, or one of the first versions of the Facebook app, that you tap on each item, your news feed, your contact, whatever the different items are, and you could wiggle them and move them around the home screen of the Facebook app, exactly like you move them, or similar to the way you move them around the home screen of the iPhone app. And so it very, very quickly sold you on this idea that Facebook wanted to build an operating system or a platform within the overall iOS platform. They were building apps within apps, and they were doing it all web oriented. I'm looking at this David here, and I almost want to tap on these icons and wiggle them just like I do on my iPhone screen. The curvature of the icons looks exactly like an iPhone app to me. And these are Horizon worlds, right? This is a Horizon world that it would take me to, with no difference from this, a 2D app. This is their plan, isn't it?
Yeah, so the filter there in terms of between apps and worlds is the same on the library today. By default, you have all, which shows you both. You can use only apps or only worlds, and I guess Horizon Plus is for what you have in the games catalog as well as downloads. It's not that they've changed the filter there, but they have changed, as you say, this layout to be a lot more similar to what you would see on a smartphone, a lot more similar to visionOS, just showing, a sheet of apps compared to like pulling out library as this kind of thing hidden in the bottom right of the bar in the current system menu, right, where then it comes up as an app. That's obviously a dramatic improvement that we see. When it comes to the dimming, people are saying, I'm seeing a lot of people in the comments here saying that they're not a fan of the dimming. I want to try it, but I feel the same as you on instinct. But there's one situation where I think it would be useful, right? And one that they're going to be sort of building towards. Say you're on a plane or a train and you want to bring up the menu today, whether it be Quest, Apple Vision Pro, because it's kind of out a little bit further than the seat in front of you, you get this annoying depth conflict, right? I click the menu button on my Vision Pro, and the apps are kind of through the seat, but they're not occluded by the seat. That feels weird. So this kind of is geometry independent for the real world. You can have, a wall right in front of you, and by fading it out, it makes that depth conflict less important. So I can see that being the argument here. I wonder if it'll be optional. Yeah, you can go out to UploadVR.com and see a video that shows a little bit more of the Navigator UI. Very interested to try this out and see what we think. I think user interfaces and system interfaces are something that we can obviously talk about from seeing videos and screenshots, but it's going to be the look and feel in the headset that really matters. And we will obviously be bringing you our impressions of it whenever we have it. I have a question here from Runchlam. When is this going to be available? So as I said earlier, Meta is rolling this out to a small number of people who have the public test channel enabled. That's like the beta version of Quest's operating system. And they say it will be rolled out to everyone over the coming months. So this is a slow, gradual rollout. I'm just spitballing here, say 1% today to 100% in a few months. And based on what Meta typically does, it will increase in percentage over time in the coming weeks and months. Unfortunately, that means there's no way to force it that we're aware of. Maybe someone finds a way.
Yeah, I like Daniel's question here. Is that going to stop me watching the TV at the same time? Very interesting to think of. Like, I don't know whether Daniel is talking about a physical TV that he's watching in mixed reality, or one where you've got a virtual screen floating up while this menu is coming up. In visionOS, I'm finding myself like almost wanting two movies playing simultaneously, one in the background, like a podcast that maybe the audio is off or turned off, and another one in the foreground that's actually my main content that I want to be paying attention to presently with full volume. How that works with this sort of thing is going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, so I mean, to be clear here, this dimming only happens when you bring up the menu. The idea is they're making like a much harsher delineation between when you don't have the system interface up and when you do. I think a good analogy, again, is the start button in Windows. Imagine, for the sake of argument, if clicking the start button in Windows also kind of dimmed all the windows behind the start button. It's not that your windows are always dimmed, it's just when you have the start button up. And again, the idea would be that if you do just have your virtual TV or your real TV, or you're in an immersive app, you don't have this interface up. It's only when you click the meta button, and when you click the meta button again, it goes away.
Yeah, so Devin saying goodbye. So thank you for tuning in. And let's see. There was one here. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Just going to say, Daniel's saying, so if you have the web browser open, this won't be here. Correct. This is not like the home space. This is only when you're launching an app. There's no direct analogy to how Quest currently works because, as I said earlier, it's a complete departure to how Quest currently works. So you're here and you click browser. Browser opens and this all goes away. The fading and the interface, it goes away. You launch an app. Just like when you launch an app in the Windows Start menu pops down and the app opens. It's very analogous to the Windows Start menu.
Is this the same overlay on PCVR too?
That's a good question. Right now, they still have this separate thing where on Link you have the old Oculus Dash interface that hasn't changed from the Rift S. They don't actually show that. It'll be really interesting to see, are they finally going to unify that? Right now, the answer is still, it's a completely different Rift Dash.
Interesting to think of the idea of maybe parallel processing yourself in a really interesting way there, where you tell your desktop to generate something for you and you don't actually use the headset for it, and you just use this unified Horizon OS overlay and system between the two things to let the PC make something for you and then spit it out the output to your headset.
Yeah, the advantage of doing the interface locally for a standalone headset doing wireless PC VR is that your interface doesn't lag or freeze whenever your PC is doing a demanding task. As you say, you get your PC to do something demanding, right? You're running like a 10-second local AI generation model or something like that. You can have your typical browser up. It's something that people have been expecting Meta to do with Quest Link for years now. There's been rumors they're going to do it. It's so obvious. The Rift Dash is kind of decaying at this point. It feels so old, but they haven't done it yet.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we're ready to move on to the Apple section here.
There's just a few more things you want to just point out, just the few last things they're doing in V77. So that's obviously the headline feature. And the other one that they're really kind of pointing out is that in the Instagram app on Quest, they are starting to test turning the photos 3D. So these are not 3D photos. They're just captured with a regular camera. But Meta says it will use AI view synthesis algorithms to transform these photos into 3D. And this is something that is not a new technology, right? Apple Vision Pro does this to any of your photos in the Photos app. So you've taken your photo on an iPhone or anything, whatever. You turn it into 3D with a click. I wonder if Meta's doing this server side, so there's no delay, or if they're doing it client side. It'll be interesting to see. And this is, again, running a test for some people. So it's another feature that is not going to be just pop up in your headset. It's going to appear randomly over time as a rollout. Meta loves that phrase, rolling out. They don't release updates. Meta does not release an update. They roll out updates.
Is that I've seen some commentary out there from people who really disagree with the idea that the AI generated versions of 3D photos really match the quality of the actually 3D captured with two lenses with disparity between them images that you get out of something like an iPhone. And in fact, Meta specifically called out in rolling out this feature that you do not need a fancy 3D camera in order to take these images. So they specifically called out 3D capturing phones as AI filling the gap for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ian, to say that the people who do spend a lot of time taking 3D photos will point out rightly that AI 2D to 3D conversion is not the same as a real 3D photo. I guess what you could say is it's better than 2D though, right? You could, for the sake of just analysis and discussion, call it 2.5D or something like that, or whatever you want to call it. But I guess it's a middle ground. And as you point out, and as Meta points out, you don't need a 3D camera. If you do, it's been possible to view your iPhone spatial photos and videos on Quest for a long time now. You have to kind of send it over via the Meta Horizon app, but it does work. So if you didn't know that, by the way, if you have an iPhone 15 Pro or any of the iPhone 16 series, you can take 3D photos and videos, go into the Meta Horizon app, click Gallery, and send them across to your headset and view them there. So you should do that because it's pretty cool to see your own memories in true 3D in a better way than converted.
Yeah, James is talking about light field capturing needing to get better on phones. I've been messing with the 16 Pro and some of the cinematic and refocusing features on there. It's amazingly cool if you put it into portrait mode. The ability to really quickly say, okay, no, that you got the wrong area of focus of this photo. You need to focus on this face over here, and it's like. When I do that, the photo looks amazing. Yeah, it looks amazing after I do it, but it's this amazing little like the way you used to do that was you went and got your photos developed and you waited 2 hours and then you maybe applied some effects to them where you took them into a dark room and you did specific chemical processes to burn or dodge parts of the photo. Or then you took it to Photoshop and you did that process a little bit more efficiently with a mouse and keyboard. But here today, I'm just doing like a quick tap to tell it a different spot on the photo and everything all the way down, the cinematic capture of the photo. One of the things I was noticing about when you do the spatial capture with visionOS or when you do spatial video capture, really what it's doing is doing a super zoomed in portion of the thing to stabilize everything, right? Like you're getting spatial video because it's cutting off all your waviness and all the shake that you're doing right inside the headset. I don't think everyone out there like sees all of these little innovations that really get blurred by this kind of AI-ifying effects.
Yeah, computational photography is incredible what's possible on phones these days, as you point out. And all videos are actually on all modern smartphones cropped in from what you see. That's why when you switch from photo to video mode, you notice it zooms in so much. It's not random arbitrary. It's the fact that they're kind of stabilizing it electronically and optically in the vast majority of phones these days and all high-end phones, right? And yeah, these techniques are also, of course, used on Vision headsets and Quest headsets for the pass-through as well, and using the same kind of techniques, except obviously much more lightweight algorithms that can run in real time.
So as we open up our Apple section here, I wanted to ask if you could share where you're going to be in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so, well, firstly, just the last thing we want to say on V77 is that Meta hasn't made clear whether this will be a navigator feature, but they say you can now move with windows. So you can pin a window to your body and walk around your house without having to grab it. That's something that I know a lot of people have been asking for a long, long time. We haven't seen this shown on a video or picture, so we'll have to try that out. But yes, let's move to the Apple section of the show, as I will be at WWDC. I will be at Cupertino covering WWDC, and we will be hoping to see any kind of visionOS improvements there that we can and reporting on that and seeing what Apple has to show. We don't know what Apple has to show yet. They've obviously teased some of those accessibility features coming to visionOS. Presumably visionOS 3, but that is a presumption. And we'll have to see what else visionOS 3 has in store.
I have my dream list of products I want. I want my AirTags Pro or AirTags 2, and I'm a big believer that we could see surprises, even though you convinced me otherwise that they're not. The timing isn't right. It's just I keep thinking back to Vision Pro and everything. You were so good at pointing out that everything about Vision Pro essentially leaked, but it leaked because it was a lot of jilted former employees commenting on what Apple was working on after they left. And whoever's working on the next product from Apple, right? They've been strong this entire time, not leaking things if they've made it this far, probably. So all they got to do is hold out a couple more weeks.
Yeah, we could definitely see surprises. I don't. It's very hard to know what the timeline is for the next Vision headset. We obviously had those reports come out that claimed that mass production had already begun, but that was a sketchy single source. We don't know whether that's the case. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman has obviously discussed the idea that it will launch in early 2026. Supply chain analyst Ming-Chi Kuo claimed production would start in either late 2025 or early 2026. So we could always see surprises, but feels too early for a Vision Pro 2, but who knows?
Two wonderful comments here. I love James's comment saying that they have a mental image of themselves. They have a mental image of David getting dropped in a Master Chief like suit from space, all the way from like a space station in orbit like Iron Man, straight to the ground outside of the Apple mothership, and then his suit flies away, and then he walks into the Apple mothership. So I appreciate that image. I very much appreciate that mental image. And then Afro Badger saying, nice work, Jolly from the UK. I assume you're taking your Apple Vision Pro and not your Quest 3 for the flight.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, the if you have access to an Apple Vision Pro, that's absolutely what you would be taking on a flight. You wouldn't take the Quest 3. From last year, the addition of Prime Video to Quest 3 has made it finally at least somewhat viable to take on a plane without sideloading torrented movies or something like that. But Vision Pro, obviously, thanks to the 4K micro OLED displays, the Apple TV app with 3D movies, Disney Plus with downloads, all of these things just make it significantly more appealing for a flight.
Well, let's talk about you too.
Let's talk about how Bono is going to be automatically preloaded onto your Vision headset forever. No, that is a joke, to be clear. A lot of people did make that joke when Apple announced this kind of Bono partnership. Trying to find the image here. I'm sure I will at some point. Here it is. Yeah. So if you're not aware, we have discussed this before, but later this month on May 30th, the first ever feature-length Apple immersive video will come out. We reported, obviously, on the first ever short film that came to Apple Vision Pro, Submerged. Ian went and tried it out before release and everything like that and did a great review. It's, I think, around 17 minutes, and that's the longest so far. But Bono's is going to be a feature-length film. We don't know what exact length, but it sounds like it's going to be significantly longer. And if you're not familiar, Apple Immersive Video, it's 180-degree 3D immersive video with like 8K resolution, really high bit rate, high dynamic range, 90 frames per second, spatial audio. To simplify it, as you said before, it's immersive video done right. The quality bar is passed to the point where it's good. It's not the kind of it's not the kind of immersive video you watched on your Gear VR or Google Cardboard a decade ago. This is actually good and actually so compelling that entire new types of entertainment can come out of this. And it's not that we're particularly excited for Bono's Stories of Surrender. I don't know if I'm thinking, wow, I can't wait for this. Maybe if you're a Bono and U2 fan, you can't. But what's significant about this is the feature length aspect and what Bono has actually said in an interview to Deadline. So obviously, in the creation of this, Bono has been in contact with Apple executives and in the Vision Pro team, the visionOS teams, and kind of gotten the pulse of what's going on here. And obviously, there's a lot of speculation in the media about, is Apple going to abandon visionOS and Vision Pro? Some people who are completely misinformed think Vision Pro is already being discontinued and that Apple has given up on headsets. Just shows you how awful the information landscape is today, that people actually believe that. And the reality is, as we've reported many times, every new Apple store that's built has a dedicated section for Vision Pro demos. And the giant elephant in the room, yes, is that Vision Pro is $3,500. But you can't simultaneously say this thing is too unaffordable, it's $3,500, and Vision Pro was a bust, it wasn't a hit, it failed. Well, no shit, it's $3,500. It's the introductory product in an entirely new product line, an entirely new OS from Apple. And over time, as we've said on this show many times, they're going to get cheaper and they're going to get lighter. Not all at once. It's not like, a couple of months from now, Apple's going to release a $500 headset. It's going to be gradual. People really hate these days the idea of a narrative that is, this is going to happen slowly and gradually rather than everything's going to change instantaneously with this one moment. Unfortunately, no. The next Vision headset will be cheaper and lighter. The one after that will be cheaper and lighter. And the one after that will be cheaper and lighter until eventually it passes each interested person's threshold for price and weight, while the utility increases, while visionOS gets better, while lots of more Apple Immersive Video comes out, while we hope we'll see live Apple Immersive Video for sports and concerts. All of that's going to happen, but today we're still at step one, where the hardware that was designed in that was meant to come out in 2022 Apple Vision Pro is what we have today, using extremely difficult to manufacture 4K micro OLED displays that make the price ridiculous. But here's what Bono said in response to that of, oh, this is cool that you're making this documentary that will be available in immersive, but, it's only for a couple of people, so why bother? And he said, I know Apple are dying to make Vision Pro more affordable and more democratic, but they're committed to innovation. They're committed to experimenting. They know not everyone can afford this, but they're still going for it, believing that some way down the line, it'll make financial sense for them. But the fact that they may have to wait a while is not putting them off. So essentially, Bono is saying here, they know it's unaffordable today. They know they can make it affordable eventually. They know it'll take a long time, and they are committed to it. This is not a disillusioned Apple. They are sticking to the plan.
Yeah, I love that. If you imagine these scenarios, David and I have gamed out a couple of these scenarios where you bring in someone like this, a creative, and you say, let's show you next year's headset, the thing we're going to ship in a year. Do you want to work with us? Right? And he goes, oh my God, that was the coolest thing. He goes and encounters dinosaurs, and he's like, oh yeah, I really want to be involved in this. And so they come up with a plan. They work together, and a year later, this thing comes out, right? This production on the other side of things. Meta's trying to do the same thing over on its ecosystem, trying to get people excited for smart glasses and get people to use them in various ways. And they have interviews with people like James Cameron pointing out that the future VR headsets that they're working on are going to blow this market open in a really fundamental way. But what I'm thinking about, David, is you just spent a lot of time talking about Vision Pro and the future Vision Pros bringing down price and weight. And I'm seeing in our comments the one person saying they want to wait for a Vision Air. And I'm sitting here going, I want a Vision, right? I want a mainline, lower cost device. And this is all leading to, you bring in someone like this and you show him the true black darkness of an OLED display. And then the next year you're like, actually, we're going to go to LCD because we need to cut $600 off the price here, right? Like, that doesn't happen in Apple, does it?
No, I would strongly bet that Apple does not release an LCD Vision headset ever. And to be clear, when I said Vision Pro or Vision, I mean any Vision headset. What they call it doesn't much matter. What matters is what it is. Today, I think Apple Vision Pro is Apple's baseline for quality, and it's pretty damn good for quality. If it was lighter, it would be an excellent headset. It's a great headset as it is. It's too heavy. It's got ergonomic problems. But if you could magically half the weight of Vision Pro, it's actually a good enough experience already to go mainstream. If it was, of course, at a reasonable price. The massive caveat is that it only is what it is because it uses a component that makes it incredibly expensive. The pair of displays in Apple Vision Pro, more or roughly the same kind of ballpark as your entire Quest headset costs you, just the displays, not anything else. So that's the kind of area they're working in. Their product future will be dictated by the displays that are available. So the two moves here is that micro OLED displays will get cheaper over time. People will figure out how to manufacture them with better yields, at better scale, cheaper. This always happens. OLED itself was really expensive 20 years ago, right? There was a massive era where the majority of smartphones were not OLED. The iPhones only went OLED with the iPhone X, the iPhone 10. Before that, every single iPhone was LCD. And even after some of the cheaper models were LCD, the difference is that in VR, the difference between OLED and LCD is dramatically different, right? Some of the experiences that we talk about, like the Weeknd's music video, like Submerged, where you're in the depths of this World War II submarine underwater, these scenes don't work in LCD. It would just ruin the experience. So micro OLED getting cheaper is one thing that's going to happen. Simultaneously, there are companies that are working on a different solution for cheaper headsets. And this is regular OLED on glass, not OLED on silicon, but really, really high density. So you can actually increase the density of regular OLED to where it's almost at the point of micro OLED. And it kind of blurs the line between what's micro OLED and what's OLED, but it's still on glass. It's not on silicon. That's something that we expect will enable what you call in the Apple Vision, not anything else, just Apple Vision. But the timescale of these kind of displays arriving is going to be, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And in the meantime, they're going to rely on the cheaper micro OLED displays arriving to bring maybe what they call a Vision Air, or maybe they just keep the name Vision Pro. I'm not so interested in the branding of these things. What matters is just like, what are they? What's the price? What does it deliver?
Well, so bringing that back to why I brought it up is this idea that Apple has been exceedingly good at differentiating across very very shrewd like choices to put their products into different form factors. You had the iPod that all the way went from a shuffle only device all the way up to iPod video, and then you had the iPod Touch, which was a very similar sort of thing to the iPhone. Right now you can get an iPhone technically without a cellular subscription if you really wanted to, and you get basically an iPod Touch. But there was a whole period there where they had 6 or 5 different versions of iPod, all fitting different form factors you could get with different sorts of features. And they've done it with iPad. There's different Macs. I saw someone in our comments pointing out screen differences between the different quality tiers of Mac. Differentiating on screen quality would be hard. I appreciate the minimum viable, but my point is like, maybe they could bring up another screen technology to meet the minimum viable quality that they have here.
And yeah, that will be the regular OLED, but high density, right? It'll be a lot cheaper than micro OLED, but not quite as high resolution, right? So this is 4K per eye, or 3.6K if you want to start getting super specific. But I think we could see Apple launch a headset that is lower resolution. I think eventually you could see 2.5K or 3K, that kind of era, but I don't think they're going to do LCD. I think it's going to have to be self-emissive. It's not the resolution really matters and enables like the virtual monitor stuff in a way that you're going to have to make it bigger to get the same level of quality at a lower resolution, but it's the self-emissive nature that happens. Like also the pixel density as well, and the pixel fill factor. The thing is, I'm on a Quest 3S right now, and I'm looking at the image in front of me, and I can tell it's a screen, right? There's kind of like the LCD lines that you can see. It's not really screen door, right? Like screen door, it's not that bad. That was 10 years ago, but I can still tell that I'm looking at a screen. What's magical about high-density micro OLED is that it doesn't look like you're looking at a screen. And this isn't just Vision Pro. There's other headsets that have this, right? The Shift All Meganix, Superlight, Pimax, Dream Air, the BOE panels that are going into, a lot of these headsets like Play for Dream. That's the magic. And I think that's what, like, when you're in these Apple immersive videos, it doesn't look like you're looking at a screen. And I don't think Apple is ever going to roll back from that. I think there's just some advantages to that make the product fundamentally different. And sure, the Apple is differentiated and they have offered affordable options, but not for every product category, not for Mac. And I remember there was one Apple event where Steve Jobs was specifically asked, like, why are you not trying, like, Windows is eating your market share, right? Like, why don't you care about market share from Mac? Why don't you have a $300, $500 Mac for people to buy to go beat those Windows laptops? And he said quite simply, we don't ship junk. That's what he said. He said, we don't ship junk. I think there is a threshold through which these things matter. For Quest, your LCD doesn't, it's viable if you're just doing gaming and things like that. But once you do start to focus on passive content where you're sitting down, you're watching a giant virtual screen, you're watching immersive video, I think the LCD does just start to not offer good enough. Now, for some people it is. I understand there's some people who are going to say, look, for me, I don't care. I don't care that it looks like a screen. I don't care that it can't do true black and there's only gray. I don't care. It's good enough for me. And I get that. I do get that. It's better that we live in a world where you can buy a $300 to $500 headset than we can't. But that's not what Apple is interested in.
Yeah. I think Tutu's comment here is saying that it doesn't matter how good the Image VR headset has, they need to market the platform and get those serious apps and games out. There is a good trickle of good games and interesting ideas being explored on Vision Pro, and we're exploring those stories in other videos on our channel. Do become a subscriber of UploadVR, either on UploadVR.com or here on YouTube to follow some of our videos. But Don and I just did a video on Table Tennis Club on Vision Pro, and it's a heck of a thing to have the quality of the 11 table tennis paddle in your hand with a track controller and just go, this is amazing. And now I'm going into table tennis club and I've just got my open hand in the air and I'm hitting a ball back reliably and I'm going, this is amazing, right? Like I'm going, this is amazing in both situations for completely different reasons. Like they're both different types of amazing. And all of our devs out there, all of the people making for these platforms have to figure out how do I serve both of these audiences with headsets that are priced all over the board, right? Like, why would anyone go and make a table tennis game for Vision Pro that gives you hand tracking at first, but also uses the Xreal touch controllers or PlayStation VR controllers to give you that next level competition if you want to go grab a thing? There is no market for making that particular game. There's not even a market for a table tennis club, right? Like, James out there, we went into that table tennis club together. We were the only players in the entire world in the game at the same time playing table tennis on Apple Vision Pro. But we went to online matchmaking and found each other through online matchmaking because of that fact. So that's like, I'm number 25 in the world for rallying with the computer back and forth with the ball. That's how high I've gotten up on free table tennis on the Quest platform. We've had people in our audience that have been knocked off the leaderboards in minutes inside Beat Saber because of how many people are playing Beat Saber and going through those songs. That's the difference of these platforms that we're talking about, right? Why would anyone go and make these dream games that we want that do everything our imaginations desire if that's how small the audience is? Like we're not. That's what always kills me. Like Apple must know that they must get lower prices in order to access a larger market.
I agree in some sense, but I think one of the biggest misconceptions about Vision Pro is that it's just a Quest competitor and that the same kind of apps that you want on one is the same kind you want on the other. The thing about Vision Pro is that the best use cases of it are all built-in functionality. It's not apps, right? Some platforms are all about the apps. The iPhone there's an app for that. Apple tried the same strategy with the watch. And sure, maybe there are some watch apps you like, but like for most people, the functionality they use with Apple Watch is the functionality built in. Same thing when you get like AirPods, right? Like you don't install an app on your AirPods, you just use them as devices. I think Vision Pro is, and at least now initially, similar. The best things to do in Vision Pro are all built in or are already available, right? It's watch on a giant cinema screen, Apple TV and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime or Netflix in a browser, right? No developer ecosystems needed for that, just the streaming platforms that already exist. Mac Virtual Display, right? View your Mac on a giant monitor. Again, it's not a developer ecosystem. The thing that it still excels at is turning screens into software. And that leverages your existing app ecosystem. Now, that's not to say that there won't be some excellent apps made for Vision Pro, that there aren't excellent apps. It's just, it's not the current focus. And I don't think it needs being the key word here. I'm not saying it wouldn't be good. I'm just saying I don't think it strictly needs third-party apps to be successful. I do think the majority of time people are spending in Vision Pro is likely just these traditional 2D screens and 3D movies brought in.
I saw a commenter out there going, why are we doing all this? All I want to do is to go to virtual worlds. I want my VR games, right? We get you. We understand you. We see you. And that comment, what I've talked to like Andrew Icke about and over at Google, the creator of JobSim, and I think I have his quotes on our website, and just in general, right? What David just described is your default position is in VR with 5 different screens around you, all software representations of physical displays you used to have. And then in between dealing with all of these flat windows, you're going, oh, I actually want to visit this world for 10 minutes, this world for 20 minutes, this world for 40 minutes. And you're popping in and out back into this space where you've got all your windows. That's starting to be the model that we're seeing coalesce here.
Yeah, certainly some of these sort of more traditional VR use cases emerge on Vision Pro. It's just, I don't think most people are spending any time in virtual worlds in Vision Pro unless you count the home environments that are kind of just like desktop backgrounds. I stress this in my Vision Pro review, but it really is, despite the fact that they are both from a hardware perspective, kind of the same thing, right? I mean, in a very general sense, they are things you wear in your head with displays in front of lenses and standalone compute and cameras to track the world. from an actual like product usage perspective, they're vastly different products. Vision Pro can't do some of the things Quest does at all very well, right? It doesn't do like interactive gaming because it doesn't have controllers. It has some gaming, but it's not the same. It doesn't do fitness very well because you have this kind of persistent smear, and obviously, again, you don't have controllers, and the external battery makes it a little bit clunky if you're kind of doing very rapid movement. But at the same time, it does some things that Quest does vastly better. The virtual screens, Apple Immersive Video, telepresence with spatial personas. I hate to kind of go back to Apple's marketing, but it is spatial computing. It isn't really the traditional Quest use case. It's not a direct competitor. But of course, Meta and Apple will be moving towards each other over time. Meta is trying to make its headsets more generally useful, not just gaming and social VR machines. Apple is going to try and perhaps over time make its headsets more entertaining and more interactive. We'll have to see how this progresses, and I'm very interested to see what Apple has to show at WWDC. I think we do have to move on, though.
Yeah, technical glitch is keeping us going and off topic, and CJ is trying to get Don Hopper in our comments to fight with us and keep us off topic more. So let's just move on to the next story instead of giving them what they desire, which is just endless circular debate. Yeah, we're not doing that.
So the news here, the last piece of Apple news is that Godot, the free and open source game engine, it's a free and open source alternative to Unity and Unreal Engine, now supports visionOS rudimentarily. It has rudimentary support, I should say. What do I mean by that? I mean that right now it only lets you build games you built in Godot and display them on a window in visionOS. Not as an iPad app, as a true visionOS app, but only in a window. However, they are working on immersive XR. So the history here is quite interesting, and it kind of has happened really rapidly. So last month, an Apple employee who's on the visionOS engineering team created a massive pull request on the Godot GitHub. A huge pull request, thousands of lines of code. Adding support for visionOS alongside a written request for permission, right? I'm just explaining what a pull request is. If you don't know what it is, it's the code, plus you kind of like put in your request. It's a very basic way to describe it, to merge this code into the master Godot branch. And the reaction of Godot contributors was mixed at best. Some really liked the idea, but others were skeptical about how this would practically be maintained and updated and tested. So one of the contributors complained that the hardware to test this is extremely expensive, not accessible to core contributors. They kind of said, are any core contributors ever going to be able to actually test and maintain this? They kind of argued, could you not do this as an extension or a plugin? Does this have to be part of the core? And those are valid concerns in some ways, right? Software features are not free. If you're not a developer, you may not know this. Any developers in the audience will absolutely know this. Every feature you add in means that every future release has to be tested with that feature. It has to support it. You have to maintain it. And the more features, the slower the development progress will be over time when you want to change things significantly. And so those are valid concerns, right? However, the lead developer of XR support in Godot, Bastien Olige, pushed back against those concerns, calling the PR an amazing milestone, thanking Apple for it. But he did acknowledge it would be a mammoth task to review and test. And what really kind of pushed this over was that he made the specific technical argument that visionOS port simply could not reasonably be achieved without being part of the core of the engine. A plugin was not going to work. So his view won out. He convinced the community, and you can go and look at the PR that we've linked to in our article. It's super interesting to watch how the open source community works together. Open source software is one of the most interesting things in society, to go a little broader and more philosophical, right? It's people who are working together for free to release something for everyone while letting everyone copy and look at what they've done, right? It is a fascinating thing that if it didn't exist, you could definitely, in a parallel world where open source software didn't exist, you could imagine an economist making a very convincing argument for why open source software would never exist. And yet it does. And it says something quite interesting about human nature, but we'll not get into that. The PR is really interesting to read and go through and see the discussion. Right now, this is only for windowed, but they are working on immersive XR support to arrive later this year as a plugin. So if you want to try this out, you can go to their GitHub and just compile Godot, It's not in any of the releases yet, but it's there on the master branch. You can use this. And it's great to see that you will have a kind of open source, free solution for developing on Vision Pro if that's what you want.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see where this goes. I vibe coded a visionOS volume app a couple weeks back using Swift, like telling the AI to give me Swift code, and boop, I had a volume floating right above me, and it was a volume with WebKit layered on the front of it. So I had two web pages rendered onto this volumetric volume floating right in front of me. It was cool to be able to pull that up in just a couple hours of prompting the AI and getting our website in this volumetric way. I'm extremely curious to see how Godot holds up to that kind of cross-platform production, because if you're saying it's just a flat screen monitor, that's very close to what I produced just using AI production. What does it look like where like I produce a volumetric app for Quest and then also port it to visionOS? Is that possible? Are we ever going to get there?
Yeah, so when it comes to some of these visionOS specific features, that is what will be arriving as a plugin. So at the core of Godot, this is just windowed, but one of the reasons that they have to do any of the immersive XR stuff as a plugin is because it's so different. And the bigger reason is that it doesn't support OpenXR. So Godot has really excellent support for VR platforms, AR platforms, MR platforms through OpenXR. It's why it supports PC VR, all of the standalone Android headsets very well. And a lot of this was actually thanks to Meta's funding of Godot. Meta funded Godot to improve their OpenXR support. And people, at Godot have kind of praised Meta and said that this was what they needed to be able to make this a first-class VR engine. Right now, this is you're not missing any of the Quest features if you build a Quest game with this. Like you're getting all of those core features. When it comes to like cross-platform volumes, yeah, you need the operating system to support it, right? You need Horizon OS to support it. You need Android XR to support it. One of the first things I'll be testing when I do get an Android XR headset is how its kind of fundamental app structure works and what can be done and what can't. But if you imagine, these platforms releasing augments eventually, as Meta called their kind of equivalent, I think for now these are going to have to be extensions for each platform in Godot. And over time, maybe OpenXR has a way to support this in a kind of interesting way. Again, we'll have to see any OS other than visionOS actually deliver it. But Apple won't support OpenXR, so there's always going to be this difference. That's always been an issue with developing for Apple's systems, right? When you develop for iOS, you're not using OpenGL or you're not using Vulkan, you're using Metal, for example. Apple is the one company in the industry that gets away with having its own proprietary development standards. And as long as developers let it get away with it, it's going to do it.
Well, a couple things there. I mean, I heard a really interesting little tidbit from one of the devs, and that you would have to correct me on this, or we'll have to verify that it works this way. But because of the rendering technology that is defaulted used by Apple, it's actually hard for devs to support all of the different modes that make a visionOS app so compelling. So for those, David has done an extraordinary amount of work explaining this, but you can render an app on visionOS as a flat panel or as a volume that takes up space. You can even make that volume resizable, so you can choose to have the thing at this scale or then also make it down to this scale and put it over here off to the side. Or you press a button and you go into fully immersive space and the app takes over your room. There's a handful of apps across the entire platform that do all of those things, that give you every one of those modes. And if you think of like, how many apps have you stopped using because they didn't have a full screen mode? Like that has happened over time. I need this app to be full screen, or it doesn't handle full screen right, so therefore I'm going to stop using it and choose something else. That's kind of like where we are with some of these things in VR.
Yeah, it is difficult because developers are trying to build for all the platforms or as many as they can, right? So if you built something for Quest and PC VR, you're not going to go and completely rewrite your app for Vision OS, or at least in most cases, you're not going to. You're going to use Unity in most cases that you already have and kind of just tack on some of the Vision OS features. You're not going to fundamentally reorient your app. what will happen eventually is that this market will get big enough that that's exactly what people do, right? Today, people build an iOS app using Apple's developer tools, and that's their iOS app. And then they build their Android app. And these are two apps, two different apps. They've got the same name, but fundamentally, they are not actually the same app. That's not how it works today for the vast majority of cross-platform VR projects. They are the same app built for different OSs, and you can kind of tack on their support. And that's why you see not all apps, in fact, most apps that are cross-platform really adopting the platform features.
Yeah, Biggs is mentioning that I'm right on that. Well, we've got about halfway through the show here. I'm going to encourage you to hit the like button and share this out with anybody else who might be curious about VR. Invite them in with their basic VR questions. We're very welcoming to those new people trying to figure out what to buy, what these terminologies mean. We like those questions because it shows us, it gets us out of our little gatekeeping bubble here that we tend to get in, where it's like, all the newbies are asking newbie questions. No, those are the future buyers of this technology. We need to kind of understand and help them where they are. So yeah, let's get through the Google section next, and then we've got Xreal first, right?
So we have the PC VR section first. We're
right,
not
yeah.
going. I always say sometimes we're only going to cover this for a second, but this one these are ones we just want to note because the first one at least is something that we actually have gone into detail before when it was released in beta. And this is, if I can ever actually find the damn thing, is Flight Simulator 2024 now has foveated rendering on PC VR. So this is both eye-tracked foveated rendering and fixed foveated rendering. For any headset you have, you can turn this on and get a performance boost and have lower resolution around the edges. This is a typical example of fixed foveated rendering, what it looks like. It's used in many, many Quest apps. So if you're a Quest user, you'll be familiar with this. And this is basically that being supported on PC. If you have eye tracking, though, such as, Quest Pro, Varjo Aero, any of these kind of eye tracked headsets, some of the Pimax crystal headsets that have eye tracking, the models that do, whatever your headset, if it has eye tracking, if it supports OpenXR, you can actually get eye tracked foveated rendering.
PSVR 2, right?
So no, not on PC. There is an open source project working on it, but they have not actually released that yet. PSVR 2 by the end of the year, I think, is their rough target on that project. I may be wrong, but currently today, if you're a PlayStation VR 2 owner, despite the fact that there's eye tracking in that headset, it does not work on PC. We were very critical of that in our review of the PC adapter for PSVR 2, and this is one of the reasons why. It must feel weird if you're using that only for PC to literally have a functionality hardware in your headset that isn't usable. This is when that gets really frustrating, when you're saying, Sony could do this. There's speculation that it's because Tobii, the company that supplies the eye tracking tech in PSVR 2, would have to have a separate license Sony would have to pay. Who knows what the reason behind that is. But yeah, for most people, this isn't there. This is something that matters a lot in simulators. As I've said before, simulators are so tough on performance in VR. Unless you have the highest end CPUs and GPUs that are thousands of dollars in total, you're going to be fighting performance. Even if you do have them, you're going to always wish you had more. There's kind of some games where when you have a high-end PC, you can sit there and go, I'm happy with this. I'm running this at maxed out settings, at good frame rate. You will never feel like that in any of the big VR sims. You will always say, if someone came to you and said, I will make your graphics card faster for $50 magically, you would always say yes. It's so performance constrained. And so this is why software features that, without you having to do anything to your PC, as long as you have your headset, increased performance are so important. So very glad to see this. The other PC VR title that supports foveated rendering is DCS. So we now have these two major PC VR flight simulators supporting it. And yeah, that's great. And if anyone in our audience does have an eye-tracked headset that they use on PC and you play Flight Simulator 2024, please let us know in the comments below. What are you seeing in terms of your performance difference and how much does it matter to you?
Byteframe, I'm seeing you make a pitch for your Steam VR home. I recommend you reaching out to Don Hopper, so like Don at UploadVR.com. See if you guys can meet up and show it off to him. I would love to see you tour that to Don and show us what you've built there. And that goes true of anyone with like a social VR world. Would love for you to get Don's attention, let him know about it, and get some tours of some of those awesome VR spaces, similar to the way we're doing Walkabout Mini Golf tours of social VR spaces. So thank you for the mention. And if you got anything like that, let us know. You can also email tips@uploadvr.com.
I see Don here saying that even with his 14900K and 128 gigs of DDR5 and a 4090, he still needs more. Yeah, I feel you there, Don. It's never enough on PC. Dunadime is asking, doesn't OpenXR Toolkit work with Flight Simulator 2024, or am I imagining that? So yes, there was this tool called OpenXR Toolkit that let you kind of inject foveated rendering into certain games. And the creator of this is actually someone who was a massive contributor in OpenXR. If you remember the controversy about Meta's OpenXR, this was the same guy that was behind kind of pointing out Meta's lack of coherence before Meta switched over to supporting OpenXR. That's a whole separate story. The point is he made this tool, but he shut it down, saying that this is a silly, hacky way to do this. What needs to happen is the developers need to actually support this in their titles, and then it solves a bunch of problems that are inherent in injecting it. And he is one of the people who is out there pushing these companies to do it. And his technique that he kind of popularized and pushed and kind of helped make part of PC VR is what is being used in this title. So in a way, this is the same thing, but that OpenXR Toolkit was for the Flight Simulator 2020. And now we're in a new world where you don't need injectors anymore because these companies are actually building the support into the game. And as the guy who made OpenXR Toolkit says, that is by far and away the better way to do this.
I have a curious question for my audience. If you were to buy a home that had free annual upgrades to the latest generation NVIDIA graphics card, would that be of interest to you? All right, let's keep going, David. What else we got here? Are we ready to talk about Varjo yet?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the last thing I was just going to say was just that Big Screen Beyond 2E is an example of a headset that's coming soon with eye tracking. And so that is the next major PC VR headset that has eye tracking. And I think a lot of people who are PC VR enthusiasts will be looking very closely at that, especially given, that you get the micro OLED displays, those really great new pancake lenses. I think that's why it's so important that Beyond 2E exists at $1,200 if you already have the Steam VR tracking hardware. George Jorgensen saying that it looks like Horizon OS V77 will have a follow me for Windows. Yeah, we did point that out earlier, but it's a great thing. And you're right to say that lots of MR fans have been asking for it. Right now, you kind of have to grab it like this and pull it along with you. It was in the changelog. We have it in our article. We mentioned it earlier, but Meta hasn't shown any videos or photos or even said, like, is this a rolling out thing or is this for everyone? Who knows? We'll just have to guess, I guess. No pun intended. Yeah, let's quickly point out that Varjo documentary that I was speaking about earlier. It is rather ironically named VR is Dead. Stories beyond the metaverse. Of course, it is not about VR being dead. They do have this kind of intro section I disagree with, where they kind of contrast all of the media coverage about the metaverse and all the hype and the, everyone's going to live in the metaverse in 2 years thing from 2021. That's obviously ridiculous hype at the time. We pointed out how silly it was. And Varjo has obviously contrasted this to enterprise, military, government uses of VR. And that's obviously where they serve, right? Varjo is this Finnish company. They make these $5,000 to $10,000 ultra high-end headsets. Their thing is that for VR, you have near retinal resolution in the center. They used to have these headsets that had literally 2 displays per eye, one inlet display, but now the XR4 is not like that at all. It's just one really high-res display. It's actually a 4K LCD, but it's really distorted. The lens is like heavily distorted, such that the center is much higher resolution than the edge, and so you kind of get that with one display. That detail aside, some of the things they cover in this little 30-minute documentary includes automotive design. So Honda in California is now using mixed reality to evaluate the interior and exterior of proposed vehicle designs. That's instead of making expensive and time-consuming mock-ups. Those are Honda's words. They said the old way they did things, expensive, time-consuming. Now they can literally mock up a car in 3D modeling software, put on their Varjo headset on their super ultra high-end PC and render this thing photorealistically and sit in the cockpit, and the designers are sitting and going, I don't like the line here. I don't like how this works. I think, this button shouldn't be here. They're even able to model the interior, right? Because this is mixed reality where they have pass through for your hands and arms, and then they're actually reaching around this virtual cockpit, trying to imagine the ergonomics while they're driving and going, no, this button's not right here. It should be here. Or, this line here doesn't look good. And then this is obviously letting them, rapidly iterate on vehicle designs. Another one was architectural design. Lots of companies doing this. A company was talking about how they are, inhabiting their buildings before they're built, co-experiencing them with another office. They're in New York. They have an office in Japan, and they're all in VR together, looking around these buildings that they're designing. This isn't just blueprints. They're in the virtual building. Military pilot training. There's a company that uses mixed reality to merge a replica cockpit of U.S. military aircraft with the virtual airframe to train these U.S. military personnel. This is a portable and forward deployable simulator, they say. We covered on UploadVR how Varjo headsets are also used as part of the first FAA-qualified VR flight simulator, so pilots can get their official training hours on this VR flight simulator for the first time because they have the resolution now and the mixed reality to bring in the real cockpit. The FAA has said, this is so good, this is real training. That's pretty crazy. They're also used for training Ukrainian pilots to fly the F-16 fighter jets that the country has received from NATO countries. So Varjo headsets are being used for these flight simulators in really serious scenarios. Other military vehicle training, the Bohemia is using it to train like ground vehicles. They also have this mixed reality kind of diorama view for doing like tactical planning. There's another one where they're doing medical training, right? They have people in Australia for the Australian Air Force doing like medical training on like a physical cadaver with mixed reality tools. Really cool. What's the other one? Maritime training. They're able to train civilian captains of these giant tanker ships to pilot these tanker ships in VR with the physical control. And then they say that is so much cheaper because it means you don't have to actually get the fuel of the real tanker ship. You can train people and not mess up and not have to spend so much on fuel. Command centers is another one, and OpenBCI. So go watch this documentary is all I'm saying. It's interesting. Obviously, it's a little bit of marketing from Varjo, right? These are all companies using their products, but I'm giving them a pass on this one because it is cool and interesting what these companies are doing.
Yeah, pretty par for the course with the people that are using this headset compared to people who are using Apple Vision Pro, people using Quest Pro, people using Quest in just ways that the general public hasn't really accepted are better than traditional ways of computing. So yeah, very good title here on this, and it speaks to something I'm hearing amongst several groups out there. Walkabout Mini Golf, for the bingo card people, right? They have fans who use VR in extraordinary ways, in surprising ways. And there's just no one in the mainstream media that is ready to latch on and tell those stories. So this is the exact same thing from Varjo that Walkabout needs done for their worlds, where let's tell the human stories of like what this is doing for me that I couldn't do without a headset.
Yeah, a few comments here. CJ7 saying that the title has put them off. I agree. It is very clickbait. It's very silly, but I would say ignore the title. Another comment here, Alberto saying, I think I would prefer pilots that trained in real life. Well, it's not that this replaces all of real life training. Obviously, don't worry, your pilot's not going to get into your plane only having used VR. That's not how this works. The problem is actually that throughout the United States and many countries, there's a massive pilot shortage. And some of this is actually to do with the training infrastructure. Before these pilots do get into these aircraft, they use traditional simulators with these giant screens. And these are things that have to be at a fixed location, and they're much more expensive, right? They're an order of magnitude or more expensive. All you need here is like a little kind of structure of the cockpit and a headset, and the rest is all software. Again, turning screens into software. But this case, it's fully immersive VR and mixed reality. Um, but again, these simulators are really good. Again, they're using a cockpit that is identical. The simulation dynamics here are identical to the real aircraft. I've read about these reports. I've looked into this. Like, these are pilots that are saying that they go into the aircraft for the first time for real, and nothing's different. It's just the same. They say this like, this is the same old aircraft I've been practicing with in the headset. Nothing's different.
Yep, big deal there. And I think we've got one more story in the PCVR section here, and four more after that. So we're still moving through this as quickly as we can, making a pitch here to hit that like button one more time. Thank you to the amazing commenters out there who've kept this all going. And agree with you, CJ, on the sort of shock value. But I like this when you do a headline like this, right? When you click on it and you find the absolute opposite conclusion, right? Stories beyond the metaverse. Pretty good subheader there, where we're like, Zuckerberg tried to make the metaverse a bigger thing than VR is, and he's still trying to do it. But I don't know. I like the statement here.
Yeah, I agree. It's clever in a world where everything is about kind of attention and branding and information. It is good to kind of point out that, like, the metaverse is not VR. I think there was a massive backfire there in Mark Zuckerberg's strategy of rebranding all of VR and AR to the metaverse. And companies are, this is obviously a topic we'll talk about another day when we don't have.
Yeah, don't get me started, David. Move on.
Let's move on. Let's talk about Valve. So the founder of Lynx, Stan Leroux, has said that the design of Valve's next headset is quite amazing. And Lynx, if you don't know, it was a French startup headset. It is a French startup that makes a standalone headset called Lynx R1. Lynx R1, when it was actually first announced as a Kickstarter, had it shipped on time, it would have been the first standalone mixed reality headset with color pass-through mixed reality. It would have kind of been like a Quest Pro, but without the eye tracking and face tracking and stuff. Of course, the classic problems of hardware startups happened. The global supply chain was not in a great place at the time. And even today in 2025, Lynx is still not fully shipped. I think they've shipped to like the vast majority of backers now, but not all. And obviously in that time, Quest Pro, Quest 3, Apple Vision Pro, Quest 3S came out. Lynx had to increase its price a bunch. By Stan's own admission, it's been a mess. He said that himself. So Lynx itself, R1 at least, has been a disaster, I would say. I don't think that's too much of an exaggeration, but the company's still going and they're working on Lynx R2, and they've learned a lot since then. And Lynx was actually one of the companies announced, we'll talk later, that will be using Android XR. So we've seen the first two Android XR headsets. From what we know, from what Google has said, Lynx should be number 3, unless there's another one we don't know about. That said, that's just the background on Lynx. This isn't about Lynx, this is about Valve, because Stan has made this enormous claim. The design of Valve's next HMD is quite amazing. And so he said that, like, he's not going to say more because he would be equally pissed if Lynx R2's industrial design was leaked. But he kind of hinted where he got this by saying that they share many of the same suppliers, Valve's next headset and Lynx R2. So I'm guessing, he says this is like a small industry. People are going to figure this out. And he, I think, probably just saw the design from a supplier of something related to Valve Deckard. So I wonder what he means by that. This is one of those really frustrating quotes where you would love more detail. I would love more detail. We don't want to report this without detail, but there's not any more detail here, unfortunately.
Yeah, at this point, and we're gonna, David is a veteran of this battle at this point, right? Of chasing the Valve rumor mill that just turns up at every corner to just stir up the pot of excitement for something that might not ship or might not appear for years. Really wonderful discussion, but there is the one person who is saying that VR is dead, and I wanted to respond to that and refer to my comment at the beginning of this whole video of just the social things that aren't going away. So, like, I don't know how I can win this argument, but like there's a group of people who have been able to find social connection in VR that they were unable to find in the physical world. And when you tell me that VR is dead, what I need to hear from you is how does that person find their social connection in the physical world instead of the way that they found it in virtual reality?
Right.
When you explain that to me, you will explain to me how VR is dead.
I see. I was wondering which comment you were replying to here. I think they were maybe saying about the term VR as a marketing term, but I agree with what you're saying, Ian. Absolutely. There's VR is not dead. VR is only just getting started for sure. We're still in the early days. That's, I think, part of the VR download drinking game, me saying that we're in the early days of the early days, but it is absolutely the case. So just on the Valve headset, we'll just kind of briefly say that like it's not just a rumor. If you think Valve isn't working on a new headset, they have literally said on multiple occasions that they're working on a new headset for years now. It's not a rumor. They are working on a new headset. What it will actually be is the subject of rumors and when it will actually ship. And of course, like any company, they could cancel it at any time. But it does seem like we're getting closer. We did see in November those controllers that were leaked, right? Those Valve Roy controllers, literal 3D models of the controllers of this headset leaking in the Steam VR files. In March, there were references to a proof of concept model with 2K LCD panels and a Snapdragon chipset, though that doesn't mean it will actually ship. When it comes to the design, right, because what we're talking about today is the design, we haven't seen any leaks of this for years. The last time we saw a design was in a patent. Sorry to take your screen away from you, Ian, but a patent in 2021, and this is what it looked like then. But keep in mind, the controllers we saw in another patent in the same era looked vastly different to these Roy controllers. So there's been a lot of time between now and then, and I imagine this is probably a completely different design today. This was probably just what they were working on at the time. So the reality is we don't know what Valve's headset looks like, and we don't have any leaks of that. That would be the big leak that I think would kind of really enter the hype here. Like we have so much. We have all these dozens of references to Deckard and Steam VR files. Valve literally put a job listing up a year or two ago where they talked about wanting to ship a headset to millions of people with inside-out tracking, pass-through, environment understanding, eye tracking, and hand tracking. This was in their job listing, and it wasn't just develop a headset. It was, the job listing was, help us ship a headset with these features to millions of people. So there's so much smoke here, but I think for some people, just like when we were always talking about Apple releasing a headset, there'd be some people in the comments saying, oh no, you're crazy. Apple's not releasing a headset. Don't believe all these rumors. And then it happened. I think for some people, they're going to need to see a picture of the headset. And for others, they're not going to believe it even then. They're going to believe it on the day that they open Steam and they say buy now.
What's funny is when you go back to the history books of all this stuff, it's remarkable. There's a whole generation of people who like missed that Valve was the company that powered the original HTC Vive. There was some other company that was making that magic happen, right? It's HTC, it's not Valve. That's how they picture it in their minds. When like this is one company that is holding the weight of the PC VR market on its shoulders, much to the frustration of everyone else who has to be forced to use their Steam account in order to access all that content. With a double-edged sword there of just I don't know, been a long journey of Valve powering a lot of really cool innovation in VR. Not taking credit for it and just taking dollars, right? Like that's kind of the way.
I don't think I've heard anyone complain about the Steam account requirements since Half-Life 2 released. I think we're past that, but it's interesting that once was a thing. When Half-Life 2 came out and it was bundled with Steam, the PC gaming community was furious. How dare I have to make a Steam account to get Half-Life 2? This is the end of the world. And now today, you couldn't pry most PC gamers' Steam account away from them. I think we're the opposite, right? If you tried to tell them, close your Steam account, they'd punch you in the face.
I'm getting the vibe from the comments here of just, they're trying not to let themselves get emotional at your words, David. Like they're trying not to believe you, even though they do believe you, and it's making them feel pretty complicated out there in the comments, I think.
It's tough because there's been a lot of there has been a lot of hype, and if people say a lot of copium, right, that comes obviously from and XR enthusiast Brad Lynch, who obviously is a source of a lot of the data mining, his Discord community. And I think, he's provided some really fascinating leaks, but perhaps at times there are ways to read what Brad has said that would suggest that it was just around the corner. No, I think, I'm not saying that Brad himself has implied that. I'm saying that some people have read what Brad has said in the past and interpreted that as Deckard is just around the corner. And I think if you hear that for 4 years in a row, you get a little bit jaded each year when it doesn't happen. And something we've been trying to say very carefully at UploadVR all the time is, these products, these headsets take years to develop. Some startups try to rush it all out in a year or two, and it's a catastrophe usually, right? That's usually actually the source of a lot of the catastrophe of some hardware startups. The reality is that the headset on your head was designed years before it was released, and these things have 3, 4, 5-year development processes. And so, it's completely entirely possible that Valve was indeed working on all of these things when it was leaked that they were, and yet it's still not coming out yet because it just takes a long damn time to build things like this. Headsets are remarkably hard themselves. Like, it's not just a TV, right? It's not just a panel. A headset is the interaction of a bunch of different technologies all working together while having to be worn on your face and comfortable and work even, as you're moving around and with different people's face shapes and eye shapes and, all these different tracking technologies. And then when you go standalone, it's crazy. You're trying to build a whole computing system that also has all of these factors built in. These are really difficult products to develop. And it's not surprising that it has been in development for many years now.
Deep is out there time traveling to catch up after watching us live. So good luck as you catch up to our past selves in this comment. And I love the people commenting. As always, tell us where you're tuning in from. We love seeing weird locations that people might be watching us from, whether it's in VR or the real world. We love to know where we're being watched from. Yeah, there's really interesting things to think about with Valve potentially finally entering the market again of standalone VR. And man, David, you and I are going to spend a lot of time this year arguing or talking about this, so we might as well just move on to Xreal now, right?
I like that it wasn't talking and arguing; it was arguing and talking in that order.
Fair, yeah. All right, we're going to talk about Xreal now, right?
Yeah. So, if you have the Xreal 1 series, these birdbath optic glasses that let you kind of project your phone or your Nintendo Switch or whatever onto this floating virtual display, you'll be very happy that compared to the previous ones, they are 3'd off, right? So the previous Xreal glasses, when you put in a HDMI or DisplayPort source, would have this head fixed virtual monitor that as you turned, it was fixed to your head. As you move forward, it's always fixed. It was 0'd off. Then the Xreal 1 series came along and it had built-in 3'd off. They have a X1 chipset and an IMU, so they can keep it kind of rotationally locked in position as you turn your head, up, down, left, right, turn, etc. But it's still positionally locked. It's 3'd off. It's like Oculus Go. If you move forward, the screen stays fixed to your head. If you stand up or lean or whatever, it's always fixed. And that's not the same as what you have on your Quest 3 or your Vision Pro or whatever, where you have these world locked 6'd off screens that really look like they're floating there. And so the announcement here, we have another Xreal announcement to talk about later, but don't get confused. There are 2 entirely separate announcements. The announcement here is that they are starting to ship in Japan and launching in late June the Xreal Eye add-on. So this little thingy for $100 pops into the center of your lenses right here. And the original announced purpose of Xreal Eye, and this is one of those things where you just wonder what on earth is the difference between the announcement and technology. The original announced purpose was just to take photos, right? So like photos and videos do the same thing as Ray-Ban Meta. You have a head-worn first-person camera. Pretty cool, right? You can use this for whatever things you want to record in first person. I don't know, you're cooking or whatever. But then at the Japan launch event last week, they detailed that this does something else completely. This actually turns the Xreal 1 glasses 6'd off. It adds positional tracking. And so at first, the kind of understanding that we were given was that this would be through the Xreal Beam Pro, their kind of phone-like thing, $200. It's like a compute puck that's also a phone. But it turns out it's not just the Xreal Beam Pro. The 6DoF tracking is done on that same X1 chip built into the glasses. So for any input source, without having to use an external computing device that handles this, you get 6DoF. So you plug in your phone or your Switch or whatever, and you have it on a floating 6DoF positional screen. Caveat here, this is one camera. This is a color camera that is optimized for taking photos. This is called monocular SLAM, where you just use one camera for positional tracking. The quality of this, because of that and because of the camera type, is likely to be a lot lower than what you get from the tracking quality of a Quest or a Vision Pro or a PlayStation VR 2 or whatever. But we'll have to try this out. It is likely this is not rock solid, is what I would say. The cameras that you have, like on the front of your Quest, you may notice, why do you have color cameras and tracking cameras? Well, the tracking cameras are grayscale, so they're lower latency, and they're much wider angle as well. A camera optimized for taking nice pictures and doing pass-through, and a camera optimized for tracking systems are actually different things. And this is the former, for taking pictures. Still very cool to do it, right? And I guess we all do this on our phones if we ever play around with like ARKit or ARCore. Our phones do monocular SLAM all the time. But notice with your phone that it's a little bit hitchy, it's a little bit jittery. Super duper curious to see what the quality is here. I said this at the start of the show, but I don't think any shipping product has done monocular SLAM as a upgrade like this. It's pretty remarkable to be able to just drop in a camera and upgrade from 3DoF to 6DoF. Even if the tracking quality is bad, it's still really cool. But we don't know what the tracking quality is yet. That's just speculation.
So there's a fair number of comments still talking about the Steam controller thing from the last subject, and I wondered if we could address it or talk about it. I wanted to move on since I think we're going to talk about it all year, but there were some very useful comments in there talking about the differing priorities, where one commenter is like, I kind of feel like these controllers are designed for gamepad, flat screen interaction first. And that's actually makes sense for me because all I want to do is play those types of games in VR. Like that's my first and foremost desire. And then another commenter is replying back to them, no, I want more VR interactable, whatever that word is. I want more VR interaction, more interactable objects and stuff like that. And I'm looking at those controllers you had up on screen, David, and am I right that they're basically going to be moving the grip button from your index finger to your fourth finger, your ring finger? Is that how that's going to work?
Let me bring them up. I don't think the grip button's different at all. I think the difference is that you have a D-pad here. Oh, that's another trigger. It's a second trigger.
But which fingers am I putting on them?
Yeah, you do. It's the middle finger on that one, I think. Or I think you can just switch your index finger between them. This is something that Vive Cosmos had, this kind of dual trigger where one of them is like a button clicky trigger and another one is the under trigger. The point of this is so that you can do bumpers, right? It's a bumper. So just like when you use your gamepad, you switch between your index finger being on the bumper and on the trigger. It's no different. The idea here is, as the commenters are pointing out, that you don't need a gamepad, that you have all of the same buttons that you have on a gamepad, but on this, right? And that's what's missing today. You can use your touch controllers to emulate a gamepad in apps like Virtual Desktop, your Quest touch controllers, but you don't have a D-pad and you don't have bumpers. And that's what this kind of brings.
So you all remember the movie Minority Report, and Tom Cruise puts on gloves that I believe track his main three fingers. If I recall correctly, they leave the last two fingers untracked or untouched, and everything he's doing in that Minority Report interface is with those main three fingers doing their thing. And I'm just saying, David, like the Cosmos controllers really landed with a clunk to a lot of people because of whatever reasons. And I'm wondering how much of it is these VR gamers who are like trained to use the grip buttons on the sides of the controllers to physically like grab this object that's in their hand, the Vive controllers. And then you're going over to these Cosmos controllers where, well, wait, am I doing this as a grip button, or am I using it as a one-to-one thing with a video game? I'm just worried about that mismatch from all these people that have used the controllers one way, and now they're going to have a different button for the grip.
Yeah, so again, the grip button's the same. It's just that on the trigger, you have a bumper on top of it, right? That's the only addition here. And I think the commenters are right in saying, it's just, you've used a gamepad, a regular gamepad. You switch your middle fingers between, sometimes use the bumpers and sometimes use the trigger, right? Like, am I
I
forgetting how a
guess, yeah,
gamepad
no, I
works?
guess that's fair. But how does it map? How do all the existing experiences map to now you've got a second trigger finger right there next to the other one? Does it just
It's a great point.
default to it being the normal trigger?
Probably by default. I mean, I guess the thing is that Steam VR has really good input bindings, so you choose as the user. The default is an excellent question, but I think a lot of PC gamers really enjoy the fact that they can tweak everything in Steam and choose exactly how they want it to work. I guess the answer is Valve will let you choose, but as the commenters are pointing out, this is clearly designed for flat screen gaming. It's not for VR. These are VR controllers, of course, and you can play VR, right? There's no reason this can't play everything that Quest touch controllers can, right? They have all the same inputs. The buttons are just over here. But the design here is clearly not how do we make a better VR controller. It's how do we make a VR controller that can also play your flat screen games.
And this is maddening, right? So at the same time, we're hearing rumors that PSVR 2's controllers, which are genuinely moves forward in haptic design, when you have the resistive triggers that push back at you a little bit, depending on the experience, that's genuinely really, really cool, innovative design. But that's one big fat trigger on those controllers, I think, right? That pushes back at your fingers. That could be supported very soon by visionOS, if Apple follows through on that. And then here's Valve moving to this next difference thing. You've got to now, as our commenters are pointing out, have different support for this input scheme.
Yeah, I mean, it is disappointing for some. I see some people who are really disappointed by the ROI because they want something that takes the index controllers, which were designed for VR, absolutely VR, everything's VR, and go forward. They want more haptics, they want more finger tracking, they want more capabilities, they want the kind of ability to let go. It looks like these are going to go, take all that away and get rid, for the sake of portability, for the sake of not having to strap in. There are going to be people who are disappointed by this. I've seen, index owners who look at this and say, this is not what I want. I want my index controllers. Maybe index controllers will still be supported, right? But it's fascinating to say that you simultaneously do indeed have Sony make a VR controller for VR. And if Apple does adopt that, like the rumors suggest, the trade-off is that, yeah, you're going to need to have 3 controllers. You're going to need to have your VR controllers and your regular PlayStation gamepad to play everything. You've muted yourself.
Yeah, I'm in literal hell. You just described hell. I can't escape it. It keeps coming back. And then I'm also going to be wearing their Meta wristbands on my wrist so that the Meta AI can get my signals as I'm sending them through my wrists to my gamepads for a better Meta experience. So I'll have 3 gamepads and a Meta wristband to track all of my outputs. All right, we got one last section here, right?
Yeah,
with Google.
Hold on. There's one comment I want to bring from Subcog here, which I think is really the reason behind this. Subcog says Quest won the VR controller wars, Index lost. And in some senses, that is right. If you look at the original Oculus Touch controllers, it is for Oculus Rift, it is clear that all of the controllers that we're seeing today spawned out of it, right? The controllers of today do not look like the HTC Vive ones, and they do not look like the Valve Index controllers. In fact, for so many years, when a company said we have track controllers, you knew it was going to look exactly like the original Oculus Quest controllers with those kind of small rings on the top. Meta then slightly shifted the design for Quest 2. And then with Quest 3, now we see all the companies making controllers that look like Quest 3 controllers, right? Where it's the same concept. You have obviously Pico 4 Ultra with the similar controllers. These are obviously the same design. And I don't think it's as simple as people copying Meta. Obviously, it's not that simple. It's that the engineering constraints dictate the same result. But at the same time, you can't look at this and say that this isn't, Meta got to decide the input scheme of the future. They got to design for interactive controllers. These are the super action. That was the code name of it back in the Oculus Touch days. But it won.
So a couple of the commenters are pointing out that now, so you say it won, but this is a different design in a couple respects. You've got 2 buttons on either side.
Sure,
2
but
buttons on either side.
It's a variation on the same thing. Look at the shape of it. Look at the grip triggers. Compare this to an Index and a Vive wand. It doesn't look anything like an Index or a Vive wand. Compare this to a Quest 3 controller. you could easily get them mixed up if you were in the dark, right?
Follow my thinking, though, that at the same time that visionOS goes to Steam VR parity, i.e., you can pick up the PSVR 2 controllers for your visionOS and go into ALVR and hopefully enjoy the entirety of the Steam VR library. They're going to then go and ship these right after that are like, okay, you want to interact with the entire flat screen Steam library? You've got these, and you can use them. You can crawl into bed, put them under your sheets, and look up at the ceiling and have full comfort of your hands on either side. You're doing full input of your games. But where I'm getting at, like, don't both of those things serve Valve? And what does that do to this fact that you just said that Meta won the controller war?
It's not the kind of meta. I guess it's simplified to say they won the controller war. I think their design team won the design war, right? It's not that you're buying meta controllers; it's that everything else looks like it. In the same way that, after the iPhone, every phone looked like an iPhone, right? But yes, of course, for people who are using these headsets to connect to Steam, then that is, of course, an advantage to Valve, of course. But I think a lot of Apple's focus, if they do deliver PSVR 2 controllers in visionOS, is going to be standalone stuff. And when it comes to flat screen, they have their iPad games. You're not just streaming from Steam. You're also, there's apps that let you stream from your PlayStation, from Xbox Cloud, on Quest. On Apple Vision Pro, we covered this earlier this year. You've got GeForce Now, right? So you don't need a PC. You can plug in you can go and buy a PlayStation gamepad or whatever one you want, pair it to Vision Pro, and play enormous, giant NVIDIA GeForce Now games on the giant screen.
Yeah, our commenters have kind of rolled out how they think it's going to function, where it'll just be the default Oculus format that you get out of these things, and then some, you'll get added features, right?
It's just the buttons are here rather than here. You're still, if they say press X and, you have it over here, or A or B or whatever, it's just going to be a slightly different mapping. Like, fundamentally, they're going to work in everything, because most VR games now are designed around this kind of touch-like controller, right? That's what they're fundamentally designed around. Well, I think we can move on here let's try to get to our last topic. We want to talk about what happened this week, the real kind of giant tech conference, Google I/O.
We'll have one discussion about it.
Sorry?
Do you want to run through all of these and then we'll have one discussion about it?
Yeah, sure. That's an interesting idea. So, yeah, I'll run through what happened at Google I/O. So let's start with what we didn't really see. We did not really see any new details about the Samsung headset. They reconfirmed that it is launching this year, but they already told us that in December, right? When Ian went hands-on, our headline was Samsung's headset is launching in 2025, and we went hands-on. So that's not new. I guess you could argue them reconfirming it is new, but I think Samsung already confirmed that a month or two ago anyway. It's weird that we haven't heard, the specs, the name. It's still called Project Muhan, Samsung's headset. We haven't seen an actual name from it yet. But they really seem to take a back seat. They were demoing it at Google I/O and people were trying it, but from what I have heard, it's the same demo that Ian tried back in December. It's the same thing. It's a Vision Pro for Android people with Google services and a heavy focus on Gemini. What we did see was the revelation of the second confirmed Android XR headset, and that is Xreal's Project Aura. So the first one will be Samsung's. It's a pass-through headset. It's using, micro OLED displays and pancake lenses and cameras, right? It's what we're all familiar with. This second device, Xreal's Project Aura, is a see-through device using a transparent display with a kind of optics called birdbath optics. And so what a lot of people will think when they originally see this, when you look at this image, is, oh, these are glasses, right? Or these are AR glasses. It's not really that. It's a middle product. We'll start with one important piece of information. They haven't given a huge amount of info, but they will share more at AWE in June, and I will actually be there. It's something I've just figured out, is that I'm going to go to AWE as alongside Don Hopper, our UploadVR's Don Hopper, and we'll learn more about this. But what we do know so far is that It uses a tethered compute puck with a Qualcomm chip. So this is not wireless. It's not using your phone. It's using a tethered compute puck running the same Android XR operating system as the Samsung headset. But what I always like to point out when we're talking about these birdbath optic glasses, and it's going to have to become a part of the VR download drinking game because I say it so often, is that it's important to note that these things look very different in real life than they look on a 2D photo. And that's because the kind of optical path here is a lot longer than this would suggest. You look at this design and your brain pattern matches it to sunglasses. So you think these are sunglasses. But in reality, if you see this in 3D on someone's head, no matter what angle you see it from, even if you're looking head on, it's quite clear that these are not sunglasses. And so we finally have an image here that we use to show the kind of optical path of typical Xreal glasses, where you can see it in a 2D image, but even right now, your brain is still kind of pattern matching this. And I just want to say it looks a lot weirder in real life. I'll discuss why that does and doesn't matter in a second. But the point is that these Xreal devices are kind of a middle point between headsets and glasses. They're not glasses, they're not headsets, they're a midpoint. And that's great in some ways. It allows you to have a virtual screen, a 1080p virtual screen, not quite 4K, but it's 1080p, but it's still interesting in a lighter and more comfortable form factor than putting on one of the headsets of today without having to wait for the slim visors of tomorrow that we always promise. The regular ones you get today, like the Xreal one, they are kind of dumb monitors. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that's how they work. They take in HDMI or DisplayPort and they project what you have on a virtual screen. We talked earlier about how it's zeroed off on the old models, 3'd off on the current models, 6'd off with the little camera. It looks like on this Aura, they will have dedicated 6'd off tracking cameras on the sides, as well as a middle camera for taking photos and for Google Gemini to be able to see the world. So you should get high quality 6'd off positional tracking on this one, and without the caveats that we were discussing earlier. These are the tracking cameras. They're also for hand tracking, so you can interact with the interface of Android XR. With all the computing being done, again, in a tethered puck, you do not see the tether here. I think we do have an image of Aura itself. If I can bring it up here. Yeah, we have some images of Aura, because the ones I was showing earlier were obviously older Xreal models. I'll see if this will show up on screen here. Yep, so here it is from the front side. This is Xreal's Project Aura with you can see the tether going down to the tethered compute puck. Again, this looks very different in 3D than 2D. And another one of it from the rear. So you can have a little look at Xreal's Project Aura here from the rear. So really interesting device that will likely be, perhaps, this is a spitball guess, half the price of Samsung's headset, significantly lower resolution, does not have the ability to, do fully immersive VR. And this is for kind of your virtual floating screens, etc. But it does offer that same kind of virtual screens experience that is the core of the product of Android XR through this tethered compute puck.
These people look like they just came from the eye doctor. I like that one. And I had that kind of feel like one of the things that I love about VR headsets and what I described with that whole, the one person was like, that sounds like work, right? Yes, it does sound like work inside of Vision Pro sometimes. I can legitimately do my work in Vision Pro with 7 windows all floating around me. And because of this overbearing bigness of the headset, I'm actually sending a social signal to everyone around me that I'm doing this thing, right? I'm doing the thing that's on my head and I'm not interacting with you. This always feels like a wrong sort of reverse signal you're sending to people. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in you because I've got the open eye things, but I'm not actually. My eyes are all in this thing. It doesn't feel like the right signals.
Yeah, so I think the kind of place you would want this is on a plane, to have your own private screen, or in bed. Say you're sleeping beside a partner that needs to sleep or something like that, or you just don't have a TV in your bed. Personally, obviously, if I'm on a flight, I'm going to use the Vision Pro, but obviously that's a $3,500 headset that most people don't have access to. For me, it's a lot tougher if I ask myself, would I pick a Quest 3 or an Xreal Aura? That's a lot tougher of a question, and what we really want to figure out when we do get hands-on with this and kind of test it out and see how it feels. There's other issues around these birdbath optics, the eye box. One of the huge issues I have that I don't hear anyone ever mention is the heat. They get really hot and they're right against your head. So I'm really interested to try this. They say that they've made a real breakthrough for the field of view. So the typical diagonal field of view of the current Xreal glasses are around 50 degrees, around the same as a HoloLens. Fine for a medium-sized virtual screen, but if you position the screen 3D even, like with the Xreal One, you turn your head and instantly it's cut off. So you don't really get that same persistence, right? Like the object permanence. When I'm on a plane with Vision Pro, I don't have 7 windows up like Ian, but I do have, my Mac Virtual Display right in front of me, and then behind me I have an enormous virtual cinema screen. So I'm watching the movie, I'm trying to forget I'm in economy class and doing my work and doing both, and it's great. You can't do that without the field of view that currently today only opaque optical systems do, only VR style display systems do. I'm very fascinated to see, is this claim of 70 degrees real? How does that feel? That's obviously the same as Meta's Orion, the claim of 70 degrees. But again, the difference between the kind of waveguide glasses that Meta and Apple and Snapchat are working on is that those are able to actually go directly against your eye, the same distance between your eye and the lens as you would have with regular sunglasses, whereas these kind of have this issue that some people don't mind it. We have to, put the other view. There's some people that say, I don't care, I really like this. For me, it's kind of a real deal breaker. Because it falls into like an uncanny valley of objects. If you know what the uncanny valley is for humans, it's a thing for like dolls and humanoid robots and virtual people, where when you approach human realism, you actually get into this valley just before realism, where it's trying so hard to be realistic, but is so close to realism, but is not real, that your brain feels really creeped out and uncomfortable. You see this with like certain, like I said, dolls, humanoid robots, virtual characters. Like the Polar Express movie is an example people give of this, where audiences were kind of repulsed by the uncanny valley effect. It's also about motion, not just appearance. But for me, this gives me like the uncanny sunglasses effect, where it's so close to sunglasses, but just isn't. That I don't know. There's kind of like a weird feeling there. I really want to see them lean in to the technology at some point. I'll see if I can bring up this image, and in the meantime, I'll just come back to this. But years ago, Xreal and some of these other companies actually did have designs for headsets that would lean into birdbath optics without trying to be sunglasses. And if I can find them, I'll let Ian talk for a little bit while I try and see if I can find this.
David has mentioned object permanence multiple times, and I got to bring it up again and again going into the future, where if I'm in visionOS or a Quest and I've left a window floating over here, or what I did was I had this window floating right in front of me, and I grabbed it and I moved it over here, but I didn't really pay attention to where I put it over here. I kind of just dragged it out of the space, and then I started dragging other windows right here. And then I look over here to try to find that window again. If I'm in this kind of glasses, if I've got limited field of view, I actually go like this for a second and look around to find out exactly where I dropped the window, instead of just in a VR headset, grab it and pull it right back over, because the field of view is so enormous. I saw King of Nerds out there. He filmed the Raptor Cliffs video for us, commenting about how awkward these look with how off they are from the face. And I'll prefer the field of view over this awkwardness every time.
Yeah, I agree with you in the field of view. That's a great explanation, Ian, where like so many times with these transparent optic headsets, be it waveguides or bird baths, whenever you do these kind of spatial computing systems, so with Xreal today, you can do it with their Beam Pro, where you can place windows around, and with this Android XR, it will be like an interface where you can place your Android windows around. You're always like, where the hell did I put that window? What do I have over here? It's like, imagine when you have your triple monitor set up in real life, you turn to your right monitor and your left monitor disappears or something, and you can't remember what you have on. It's a weird feeling. You're muted, Ian. You're...
What a wonderful analogy. What if your third monitor was actually behind you, right? And occasionally your windows get thrown over to that monitor, and you're like looking around for that one window, and you realize, oh, it's on that third monitor over there. Let's drag it back over. It's the same deal.
Yeah, and when Meta and Xreal talk about field of view, there's this kind of issue where we're using a different metric than what we use in VR. You may be thinking, oh, my VR headset's like 100 degrees field of view, so 70 sounds good. but they're talking about diagonal. And, the hypotenuse of a triangle, the diagonal is always going to be bigger, right? So if you ask the question, what's the diagonal field of view of a Quest 3? It's like 140, so 70 on Orion and Xreal Aura, 140 on your Quest 3. So even when, 70 is amazing for transparent optics, because the current transparent optics that are 50 suck so bad that extra 20 matters, right? Every little bit's going to matter with transparent optics. You're like, damn, that's great. But it's still nothing near what you have with your Quest setup. And there's a lot of people here who are just like me, of saying, I want more field of view than even my Quest. I want more than 140 diagonal. I want 200 diagonal. I want to go, way wider. I want to be able to have more monitors that I can see and be more immersed. Yeah. So when it comes to the design thing, the kind of separate thing, I did find this image from concept art from some of these companies from years ago, where they were considering trying to kind of lean into the birdbath technology and build headsets that were really designed around it, instead of trying to mimic sunglasses. And I personally think they should do this. This looks cool. This would be futuristic, sleeker than your Quest 3, sleeker than your Vision Pro, birdbath optics without trying to pretend to be sunglasses. I think they should do it, but they're not going to. Again, I do want to point out, though, that some people, they really don't care about this. UploadVR Don Hopper is someone who says that they personally don't care. They wear these Xreal glasses around on the street as sunglasses, and that's great. I love that. I love that. But when we're talking about the wider market, I think a lot of people do care, and they don't want to be in the device uncanny valley. You either want to have, as you say, Ian, a full-on headset on. You're either, you're in your sleep mask, your ski goggle, you have your lightweight waveguide glasses that we're going to talk about in a little second.
I get the same signal out of people with Beats or AirPods Max. Those types of big, bulky over-ear headphones. You're not to be trifled with. I do not mess with you. I don't interrupt you with you're clearly inside of your audio ecosystem here, inside your ears. I'm not gonna interrupt you. Headsets do the same thing, not this in between awkward thing. I love who was it dropping those cool emojis? Alberto. Yeah, thank you for those emojis. I like the difference there. And then James O'Loughlin saying Air glasses do not need VR or MR level field of view. Immersion and focus on virtual is not what AR glasses are for. Very thoughtful thinking about design language and what these things are each benefits for. The thing that David and I just keep coming back to over and over and over again. All right, I'm gonna give. I got to do this. Okay, the zoom feature is coming to visionOS, right? And that's optical zoom. So you will be able to in visionOS.
Oh, it's digital zoom. Digital zoom.
It's digital zoom, but it's in front of you optically, it's in front of your eyes.
Yeah, optical zoom means that the camera itself zooms.
But it's zooming for your optics. It's digital zoom for your optical.
Well, no, there's no, but the optical means a physical, lens zooming. It doesn't matter. Continue.
Well, okay, you're sitting there. You're 6 feet away from a 2020 board that you've got to read over there, right? You've got to read the letters as they're getting smaller, and you're at the right proper distance to read them with the unaided eye. You take the headset off, and you're looking at this board, and you look at the 2020 line, and you see if you can discern each of the letters over there 6 feet away from you. Now you put on your Vision Pro, and you do the same thing. You look over across the board, and you look at the 2020 line, and you turn on Zoom. You turn on this new accessibility feature, and the system zooms in you on that little row. And you're now with David's point out that this is digital zoom. I'm able to read that bottom line of text, even though my actual vision can't discern the 2020 line anymore. I'm getting augmentation out of my virtual reality headset.
Yeah.
There is no path to that on these glasses, right?
Yes. I mean, you could show a virtual screen that shows a zoom, but it's not the same thing as feeling like you're really zooming, of course. So I think the broader point you're getting at is that when you have a mixed reality headset, a VR headset, whatever you want to call it, you have, as we always quote the airbrush kind of slide, full control over the pixels, and you can do more than just add things on top. You can fundamentally remix things, right? You can reskin your room. You can do all the kind of crazy stuff that only mixed reality through a VR style headset can use. We really need to make a new version of this chart that has the third category here, the bird bath glasses. I really hate calling them glasses, but there's no better word. I was going to use pseudo glasses, but I think that would just sound too hostile and too kind of pedantic to constantly be saying, well, the Xreal pseudo glasses every sentence. I don't think that would be too useful. But yeah, we need to have a middle ground here. But what we're going to talk about soon is actually these glasses. So are we finished with the headsets part and ready to talk about the
I'll never be done with the headsets part because the headsets are going to win. But all right, David, go ahead and choose your words and go on. Yeah,
I'll choose them very carefully. So the other kind of important announcement, and arguably the bigger announcement at Google I/O, beyond the fact that we didn't hear much about the Samsung headset, nothing new. We did hear that second Android XR for headsets device, Project Aura. It is a headset in all ways that matter from a software perspective. But there's another category of device, obviously, and that is smart glasses. The Ray-Ban Meta glasses are selling spectacularly well, according to both Meta and EssilorLuxottica. They're seeing massive growth. Competition is coming. Who's going to provide it? Well, that's the answer of this next topic. Google now has its go-to-market strategy for competing with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. The EssilorLuxottica company that owns Ray-Ban and Oakley is enormous. It is bigger than all of its competitors by far. It is really like 10 to 20 times bigger, but there are rising competitors to it. So last year, it was reported that Google actually wanted to steal the Ray-Ban partnership off Meta, and they were talking to EssilorLuxottica and trying to say, hey, forget about Meta AI, come and build Gemini glasses instead. Let's do this. And that failed for Google. And Meta staved that off partially by taking a 5% stake in EssilorLuxottica. So Meta and EssilorLuxottica are now actually financially tied. So Google has decided to do what you would logically do. Like, smart glasses have to be appealing. They have to have nice designs. You're not going to kind of get a stylish design out of Google from a glasses perspective. What do? You do the same strategy, but with the next best thing, the rising competitors. So you have Gentle Monster and Warby Parker. Warby Parker is like a literal, very similar direct competitor. It operates in North America. It has, I think, like maybe a 10th or a 20th of the number of stores, but it has stores. It's doing direct to consumer. It's doing the same kind of thing, but in its own way. It's a very similar competitor to Ray-Ban. Gentle Monster is quite different. It's this South Korean brand that's popular with like Gen Z and younger people, and it's worn by celebrities like Billie Eilish and Kendrick Lamar and Beyonce and Rihanna. So it's kind of really up and coming in a new way. And so Google's plan is to partner with these companies as well as Kering eyewear, and basically be the smart glasses software and technology provider for the rest of them, the non-EssilorLuxottica. So Meta reportedly plans to launch Oakley Meta glasses with EssilorLuxottica's Oakley. So then they'll have Ray-Ban and Oakley, and then Google's going to have Gentle Monster and Warby Parker. What we don't know is, will they have the HUD? So Google gave this demo. You should go and watch it on our YouTube channel. You'll find it on our videos tab. You can go and read about it on UploadVR.com. They gave another demo of smart glasses with a heads-up display. And this is the Google presenters here wearing them. This is Google's head of Android XR. This is one of the project managers on Android XR. And they showed this great demo. It really kind of shows the utility of a heads-up display. But buried beneath all of this announcement was Google confirming that for glasses, the HUD is optional. So we actually don't know, will these glasses that are coming first from these companies be Ray-Ban Meta glasses competitors in the literal sense, like they're the same thing, a camera, microphones, and speakers, or will it have the little heads-up display like Meta's glasses that Meta plans to launch in October, reportedly, according to like 5 different sources. So that's what we don't know from Google. What we do know, the interesting thing I wanted to point out that I plan to write an editorial about, I've kind of started, but we've been so swamped recently, is that there is a little bit of confusion here as to what the phrase Android XR means. So in the original instantiation of the phrase, it meant the kind of full-fledged, standalone operating system version of Android that is like what Android TV is, right? It's an operating system that runs on your TV This one's an operating system that runs on your headset, or it's Compute Puck, right? That's what Android XR is on the Samsung headset and on the Xreal Project Aura. And it's what Google confusingly says, is Android XR, right? Like, if you Google announced Project Aura from Xreal, it said, here's the second Android XR headset. And it now says there are two. But confusingly, it also calls these smart glasses Android XR smart glasses, right? So are these smart glasses running the full-fledged Android OS? No, they're not. They've confirmed that that's not how this works. Just like the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, they run a really, really tight, low-power, optimized basic OS and leverage your phone for all of the heavy compute and the cloud for all of the AI compute. Most of the AI compute, I should say. These are completely different things. This is as if Apple announced the Apple Watch and said it's running, this is an iOS watch, but it's not, right? It's a completely different thing. So my call out for Google, I'm very interested to see Android XR on Samsung's headset and Project Aura. I'm very interested to see these smart glasses, but what they've done wrong in communicating this is that they've used this same phrase. And we actually know from some early reports from Business Insider and others that they originally didn't do this. They actually used to call the glasses one Android Micro XR, and they called the big one Android XR. But I think the idea here is that they can then build all the hype and all the bluster out of one brand, right? It's almost this like look over here kind of thing, where they know that everyone in the mainstream press doesn't want to hear about those clunky headsets. They want to hear about glasses. So you talk about Android XR and they go, well, here's our Android XR headset. And they go, where's your glasses? Here's our Android XR glasses. Ignore that they're not running what we actually really think of as Android XR. Ignore the fact that if you port your Quest app to Android XR, it's not going to run on these glasses, despite them being Android XR glasses. It would be like Meta calling the Ray-Ban OS it'd be like Meta calling them Horizon OS glasses. It's a silly thing to do. Google, if any of you are watching this, please come up with a more careful branding name. It's going to confuse developers. It's going to confuse consumers, because with Xreal Project Aura, you get Android XR kind of glasses that actually run Android XR. And then here you have Android XR glasses that don't actually run Android XR.
It's all code in my mind for Google services. Google's trying to offer a certain number of services just for the glasses and a certain number of services for the headset, and they can't figure out how to package all this stuff in a way that makes sense in my mind.
I mean, but right. So say, I don't know, say that they show like an NBA thing. So say one day they go, the NBA app is now available on Android XR, right? You load up your Xreal Project Aura Puck and you open up that app. You go to the Play Store and it's there. You open up your Samsung headset, it's there. You get your Warby Parker glasses out and you go, huh? How do I get this on my Android XR glasses?
Oh, this doesn't have a display. You realize that 1 month after you've purchased it. I love that. Yeah.
Even if it had a display, even if it had the little HUD, like it's a matter of compute, right? It's like, even if you did have this little HUD, like you're not going to be able to run any of the Android XR apps. If you build an app for Android XR, if a developer in our audience listening right now builds an app, it's not running on these glasses, right? Like that's not how this works. It's like saying that Apple Watch runs iOS. If you build an iPhone app, it doesn't run on Apple Watch. You can build a watch app, of course you can, but it's not the same thing at all. It's a completely different thing.
So here's a common query that I'm curious about in the future, and this is the example I wanted to get through when I talked about the Apple Zoom feature, the digital zoom that they're going to give you. Imagine you're in one of these glasses and you're in the same situation. On the other side of you is the 2020 line, and you tell your glasses, hey, Gemini, or hey, Meta, what does the bottom line of that text read over on the opposite wall? And the AI can make a guess. The AI could use digital zoom to try to figure out which line you're talking about over there, and then try to read what the text is over there. But what is the turnaround time for going and finding which line of text you're talking about, decoding it properly for you, sending it to doing the decoding with the AI in order to guess what the actual letters are, and then audibly tell you what the letters are? And how often is the AI just making that shit up versus actually giving you the optical zoom that you're going to get, or the digital zoom that you're going to get out of a VR headset?
So I guess there's two questions here. The first is that we had this discussion a few days ago. Like the latency end to end of asking the Ray-Ban Meta glasses about what they see, the multimodal AI, is shockingly low. Part of this is because they do the the speech text and text to speech, the speech recognition and speech synthesis on device. Part of it is also just because these high-end GPUs in the cloud are really fast and running these really optimized models. But I ask, the glasses, hey Meta, what do you see in front of me? And the time between that and actually it responding is shockingly low. It's like a second or two. It really is the answer to your question is the limit there is going to be the resolution of the camera. So if the camera is high res enough, it will be able to do what you just said. But if it isn't, you're absolutely right to say that one of the issues today with these large language models is that they will hallucinate, right? A lot of the time, a big challenge right now is how to tell them to say, I don't know. And a lot of the time, they will indeed just come up with something plausible, but not accurate.
What a
However, again,
wonderful explanation, yeah.
I would say if they do have a good view of it, they'll pretty much get it right. Like I've tested this a lot now across Gemini on my phone, across Meta AI on the glasses, and across ChatGPT in the app. It's remarkable how good they are at understanding what they see.
It makes sense, but where this gets really interesting, the reason I hope you tune in to VR Download for several years to come, and maybe put yourself on a path to becoming a member or a patron to support our work, is I love David's qualifier in there, and he helped me, feed this audience right into there. If the cameras are good, right, they're going to have to pick a minimum quality bar for the cameras that they put in every single one of these glasses. What questions are people going to ask of me? What are, what answers can I get out of that quality of camera in this little itty bitty spot versus a Vision Pro or a Quest headset that is slathered with 6 different sensors and can see the environment so much better than these can.
Yeah, the world understanding over time will obviously be better. But again, it comes back to what we always say. These are different products. One's for indoor, one's for outdoor. Your Samsung headset and your Xreal Aura are for indoor. These Gemini glasses are for wearing all day. And some of the stuff they showed is really cool. Again, the big question for me is, as Jorg is kind of raising here, when is the HUD coming? There's a lot of, look how cool the HUD is. So, and then no answer to, so are these glasses, the actual products you just announced, going to have the HUD? Why did you say they're optional? Like, of course I get it's optional. You want to offer devices that are competing with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses at $300 probably, and you want to offer glasses that are competing with Meta's HUD glasses that are going to be a lot more expensive, right? Like over $1,000. But I think we need clarity around that. It seems likely that not likely. It seems almost certain that the first major tech company to launch HUD glasses with color HUD will be Meta. There are glasses that already exist with a HUD, right? You can get Evan Reality's G1. It is this is going to be fun, a binocular monochrome HUD. So it's in both eyes, but it's one color, green. There is the Brilliant Labs Pebble. It is a monocular monochrome HUD. So it's one color, one eye. What Meta is reportedly working on is monocular full color. So it's one eye, but full color. And then obviously what Google showed was also the same monocular color. So what we obviously want eventually is binocular color. And yeah, James O'Loughlin pointing out, The Verge said that Google stereo HUD prototype too. Yeah, I think Ian tried it. I've tried prototypes of the same thing, but that's not what they're showing as a product, right? So what they showed on stage had monocular HUD. And for these HUD glasses, be it from Google and Meta, I'll actually show you a photo where you can crystal clear see it's monocular, right? You can see it in one eye. You can literally see the waveguide right there. So the question is, as James asks, is this going to be comfortable? I think it's going to vary from person to person. For me, the one I tried, I didn't like it. I was able, this is a supplier of these kind of waveguides that showed me a demo, literally back-to-back, monocular, binocular. I tried both and I said, wow, the monocular one sucks. I hope no one ever makes a product out of that. And 2 years later, here we are.
I did the same thing to Google in December, right? I sat there with Project Muhan on my head and I said, how many people are in this room? And the AI could not properly tell me how many people were looking right at it. And I did the same thing. I walked into another room and tried all their glasses demo and I said, I hate that monocular display. I really enjoyed the binocular display. Please, I would love you to ship the binocular HUD as soon as possible. It had a compass that rotated accurately for me as I rotated around the room. Think about what that means for navigation. Suddenly you've got a compass up in front of your face wherever you need. Give me that, nothing else, right? Like I'm happy.
Yeah. The Google Maps demo they showed for this HUD looked incredible. I want that. To be optimistic about this, I want that more than any other thing in smart glasses. Like I hate walking around a city looking down at a phone that can't figure out the GPS because it can't see, because the GPS bounces all around all the big buildings. And then I just hate that I'm straining down and looking at something while trying to walk around a real view of people. I hate it so much. This looked incredible. If you didn't see it, you can go to uploadvr.com and we have the video showing you it. But here's how it works. They do have an IMU in this. It's not used for 3DOF, but it's used to do the following. When you're looking forward, you see your next step. So your turn-by-turn direction floating in front of you in a little kind of rectangular HUD. When you look down, you see a little three-dimensional. It's not it's zeroed off. It's not like tracked. It's not 6DOF. It's not AR, but it's a little three-dimensional top-down mini-map view of like a kind of 2.5D mini-map of where you need to go next. So at any time you look up to see your direction or just glance down to see the little mini-map. And I think that it's just, when you see it, it's like, this is clear. This is how this is going to work on all these smart glasses. And I'm really looking forward to that. Even the notifications, so look pretty cool, right? I hate having to take my phone out of my pocket to see a notification. Smartwatches exist, but you have to watch it scroll along the little display because if someone sends you a big message, it can't fit on your little smartwatch display. Even just the idea with this is that you may say, oh, hang on, this is scrolling. Well, you tap it, right? On the Meta glasses, you use the wristband to go like that, and then it comes up in front of you as a full message. Same thing with the Google ones.
Yeah, really fantastic conversation here. I think we've covered everything. Is there anything else you want to cover in the comments before we close out? I want to say thank you to everyone for the incredible conversation today. It's been really great to see everyone talking in depth about this. I'm ready for my iPhone to become a tricorder. I'm ready for my VR headset to eat all of my other displays, and I'm ready to find out how everyone else, catches up to this journey.
There's just one comment I want to address here, which is really very valid when we're talking about these HUD glasses. Craig Melville is asking, when you're interacting with people, do they see the light of the HUD from one particular angle? Yeah. So I've obviously picked this image here because it was the exact angle that showed it. But like if you looked at this image, you're not seeing it. So the presenter here, the Android XR lead, he was actually using these glasses on stage as his teleprompter. He wasn't using the teleprompter, he was using the glasses. Palmer Luckey actually did this, I think, for his TED talk recently with the Evan Realities G1 glasses I referred to earlier, the binocular but single color. And so you can see here that he's using these and you don't see it. So it's the same thing with Meta's Orion. That is the thing about waveguides, right? One thing I want to actually say, I keep forgetting to say, is the other reason that birdbath optic glasses can't replace your regular glasses, other than the design. Say even you didn't care about that. Say you're like, I don't care, whatever, I'll look like this. They're not fully transmissive. They have adaptive transmissibility, so you can dim and undim them with the button, but the most transmissive they can get, the most transparent they can get, is still blocking out most light. So they're always sunglasses. Whereas waveguides can obviously be used for indoor glasses. So the trade-off of waveguides, whether it be Meta's Orion, whether it be these HUD glasses, is indeed that at certain angles you are actually going to see the waveguide. But I mean, it seems like it is a trade-off, right? We can't say that it's not a problem. But again, I feel like it's just don't look at it from that angle. It's kind of a solution there. But I can see how, the AR glasses that people imagine eventually arriving, in your imagination, the Tony Stark glasses or whatever, you don't really think of that being a thing, that there be anything on the other side.
Jack in the comments saying, I'll take a Virtual Boy monocolor, and I just need to be upset at you, Jack, for using the word monocolor instead of monocular. My brain refuses.
Wait, where is it? But is he saying monocolor? Or
I think he's saying monocolor, right? Like he's talking about the red of the Virtual Boy in stereo over a full color.
So binocular monochrome. This is going to be so fun in the coming years to explain this over and over again.
I'm very upset by that comment, so thank you for it, for Jack. I meant color, yeah.
Yeah, so wait, you do mean color? So you mean
Monocolor. One color, red or
monochrome
green.
is what you say for that? Because otherwise you're going to say monocolor, monocular.
I mean, I'm sorry, but it sounds right. It sounds good. I think
No.
Jack has invented new terminology. He's a little Shakespeare out there, and I'm on board with
The
Jack's.
word, I'm going to be a stickler for the word monochrome simply so that we don't sound like we're saying monocular over and over again.
Monocolor. I will say, all right, so there's people out there that listen to our podcast as they're going to sleep. Fantastic. I will say to you that I also hear David say the word film as I'm falling asleep. Even though he's in another continent. So I still hear that even though I don't listen to the podcast.
Skeletal film.
All right, thank you. I got to let David out of here.
Game.
Yep. I got to let David out of here, and I need to go get back to what I was doing. Thank you, everyone, for the comments. Leave comments after the show if you can. Hit the like button. Tune into us in the future. Bring your comments. Tell your friends about VR, and pick the right episode for convincing them that VR is not as crazy and weird as it is, and we'll try to put on our best outfits here in virtual reality so that we can convince them that it's not as weird as it actually is. For that one show. I'm just kidding. We'll see you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Really interesting stuff today. I recommend going in and reading our articles associated with this. We have more details. Definitely go and watch Google's I/O presentation of the HUD glasses. Even if you're skeptical, we have it clipped out on UploadVR YouTube channel. Just the part with the glasses, none of the fluff before and after. Just what you want to see. Go watch it. It's interesting. It gives you an idea of what Meta's glasses likely will be. Hypernova launching reportedly in October. And we plan to bring you coverage from WWDC next month, from AWE, from Connect. We're going to be there. We're going to be avoiding sleep, getting coverage. Thanks so much, everyone.
We'll see you.